Okay, so we began last week Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach a Maimer of Purim Tavshin Chavav, that the Rebbe said, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said at the Farbrengen of Purim Tavshin Chavav 1966, and we're up to Se'iv Gimel, which means page 130, right? 130 on the bottom in this in these copies. Baruchim Abayim, welcome back, Harav Zaks. Shmuel, we're good? Okay. I don't always have the opportunity, but since the person is here, I just want to thank Reb Shmuel Silver for all the live streaming technology on a daily basis or every few days, and the professionalism. So anybody who hears it live, virtually, yeah, you have in Yerushalayim and others. So the Gemara says in Baba Kama, Chamre Lemare, Tivusa L'Shakya. The wine belongs to the master. The thank you goes to the waiter, to the saramashkim, to the butler. So the chamre is the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe, Tivusa L'Shakya, all the people involved in being the saramashkim and bringing the wine, making the wine flow. Nichnas yayin yotzes sait, especially coming to Purim, huh?
Didn't work out well for the last hour.
No, for the saramashkim it worked out well. For the Sarah Oifim it didn't work out well. That's Lashon HaGemara. Chamre Lemare Tivusa L'Shakya. In a restaurant, you don't go to the owner and say thank you. You don't even see him. He's behind. You tell the waiter thank you. So Chamre Lemare Tivusa L'Shakya. Here it's not just a waiter who's just delivering the dish. It's a lot more, but that's Milsa Levishayu Yakira, as is the Lashon Chazal, some users. So thank you very much. Yeah, Yeshikayach Gadol. Okay, Be'ezer Hashem, tomorrow we have a class for the women, 9:30, and we'll continue our morning class Thursday morning. Okay, today's class is dedicated by Rebbetzin Dina Schusterman from Atlanta in honor of Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, the wife of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, on the occasion of her yahrzeit, which was last Thursday, Chav Beis Shvat, the 22nd day of Shvat, the yahrzeit of Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. She is the wind beneath my wings, our wings. May all the Rebbetzins of the world and I continue to soar. Amen. The real soaring. Okay. What was the main point that we learned? After a whole arichas about Vayivez, the Medrash Bazi ben Bazi, and the whole mashal in the Medrash with the bird and the water, which we discussed in the previous classes, the Rebbe went into a maimer of the Tzemach Tzedek that starts explaining the big question from the Alshich, how Hashem calls Haman his friend. So he starts explaining the whole concept of the neshama coming down lamata into this world, and the Yerid is at Tzerech Aliyah. And the main point that he makes here is that it's only in this world where the Nefesh Halakis, the divine soul, encounters the animal consciousness and the body and everything it deals with in the world, that it encounters what he calls the consciousness of Olam HaTayu, or the sparks of Olam HaTayu, which is literally the world of chaos, Tayu. And the truth is that it's higher than the world of Tikkun. The Neshama comes from the world of Tikkun. It's called Shema, 45, Yud Kei Vav Kei, spelled out Yud and Hey and Vav Hey, which is 45, which is a Gematria Adam. That's called Olam HaTikkun, the world of order. That's where there's order. The world of Tayu is what we call the world of chaos. So in every person's life, we have both parts. We have the parts of our life where there's order, where there's structure. At least we try to create some structure. And then we have the parts of our life that create literally tayu. They create chaos. They create confusion. And they create challenge and difficulty. Often, we would think that's what you stay away from. But this Maimer says, actually, the darker parts in you have more intelligence than anything else. The darkness inside of us has our deepest intelligence. Or to put it in differently, what you think is your greatest enemy usually is holding your deepest treasures. It's hiding your deepest treasures. And therefore I need to go into those places and embrace them. Was is das? Pascal? It's not me, right? Okay. I know to make sure I don't have a Pascal. we need to hold space for them and embrace them. Not embrace the negativity, but embrace the opportunity. There's a big difference, right? When you say embrace what is, people make a mistake. Embrace all darkness. It's embrace the opportunity. Or in the Lashon of Chassidus, embrace the nitzutzes of Tohu that have fallen very low in a process known as Shviras HaKelim, the breaking of the vessel, also known as Nefila, falling, and we explained what that means last time. What the idea of falling, right? The snake versus the stick. There's alignment where you're always connected to the source, and then there's Nefila, which means you become disconnected. When somebody falls, chas v'shalom, it's not a balanced, transitional yirida. Where you're going down, like you're going down a kevesh, olav a kevesh, or funnel a soiviv, right? There's a ramp, you go higher and higher, you go lower and lower and lower. It's gradual. That's not called nefila. Nefila by definition is you're minutak, you become detached, you become severed. That's why it's sudden, it's called a fall. Beruchni, spiritually, what that means is, in Kedusha, there's never a nefila, there's alignment. It goes milmaila maila ad lamata mata, from the highest to the lowest. But it's a hemshechius. There's a continuum. Right? That's the stick. The Alter Rebbe explains that's the stick of Moshe, Mata Moshe. The nachash, the snake already here, it's not straight anymore. Here it's akum, v'nachash haya aram, it's all crooked. That's what we explained at length. And that's the difference between tikkun and tayu. So in tayu there was a nefila. So it forgets its own true identity. That's what nefila means. When something falls, falling here doesn't mean physically. Falling here means spiritually. Sheva yipa. There's a concept of nefila. I don't know who I was in the previous state of consciousness. It's like when a keli falls and it breaks into pieces. When you have a little piece, you don't see the whole picture. Or when a word gets split up and scattered, one letter doesn't show you the whole picture. That's why it's called tayu. Yeah, it loses its original song. That's what we said, that the divine soul's job is, to learn the song in the animal soul's heart and to remind it to the animal soul when it forgets it. Because it forgets its niggin. The niggin represents its continuum, its source, its sharashim. We discussed every neshama has its niggin, which is like its sharash haneshama. The source. The worst thing for a tree is, it's a death sentence, is when you cut it off from the source. It can't live anymore. And when somebody is cut off from their own life force and energy, there's no torture like that in the world, because what then happens is, I don't know who I am, and now I have to copy other people. Like, what's your life force? What's your life force? Let me copy it. Because I'm not rooted, I'm not anchored in my own life force and energy. I think I once told you, it's brought in Svarim, that the word in Tanakh for Gehenim is Sha'ol. Yeah? Sha'ol is the abyss. Sha'ol Tachtas, right? Sha'ol is the same letters like Shoyal. Shoyal, a borrower. What's the connection? The deepest Sha'ol is when you're living a borrowed life. I'm a Shoyal. Why am I a Shoyal? You borrow something that you don't have. I think that you have my life force, you have my life force, so I'm busy borrowing everybody else's energy. And it's an Inyan dak min adak. It's a very subtle thing. So in Tayu, there could be this nefila and this shvira. So really the sparks of Tayu are very lofty, are very divine. But down here, they forget their niggin. And therefore they come dressed up, and it could be extreme chaos. But it's there that the deepest gifts of the person, the deepest resources, that's the Yeridah Tzarech Aliyah, that the Nefesh HaLekis desperately wants and needs, and for that it's worth it to come down and become entangled with everything that it becomes entangled with a Yeridah which is serious. It's Kol HaDrachim B'Cheska Sakana, I don't have to tell you. The Gemara says about Mitzvah, Baruch Ata B'Vayecha, Baruch Ata B'Tzeisecha, Shetehei Yitziyascha Min Ha'olam B'Lo Chet, Ki B'Yascha L'Olam B'Lo Chet. That if you could leave the way you come, it's quite an accomplishment. A person comes in pure to be able to leave. It's not simple. So this whole Yeridah is worth it. It's not stam chas v'shalom to torture a soul. For the aliyah that it gains, everything that it gathers, all the nitzutzes of Tayu that make it in touch with who it is itself, it brings the neshama in touch with a much deeper core in itself. Dafka through the animal soul. Its purpose, its objective, and its truest power. Its truest self. Its truest divine self. And the truth is, he says that the kedima, the precedence of Olam HaToyu is not in Zman, it's in Maila, it's in quality. And that's why it has a toikif, it has an intensity, a ferociousness that the Nefesh HaLekis doesn't have. The Nefesh HaBamis has a toikif, a tremendous strength. You think it's the negativity of it that's the strength. The real strength of it is, it's the intelligence in the darkness, it's the depth in the darkness. That's its real strength. We just mistake it. We don't understand what it really is. And that's where the animal soul needs to be elevated by the divine soul. But the divine soul is also elevated through this encounter with the animal soul. As he brings from the Arizal. That it's not from the bread that we live, it's from the Motzei Pi Hashem. It's from the divine energy in the bread. A person also has divine energy. You also have a Motzei Pi Hashem, not just the bread. But the bread is from Olam HaToyu. And the Adam is Yichya. Adam is Ma, Begematria Ma, Aleph Daled Mem. The Adam is Yichya, lives from the Motzei Pi Hashem in the Lechem, which is from a deeper space than the Motzei Pi Hashem, which means the divine utterance, the divine energy that exists in the Adam. That's why Daimim Tzemeach Chai need the person, and that's why the person needs Daimim Tzemeach Chai, Datzach, and the Daimim Tzemeach Chai usually doesn't need a person. The Daimim in the world doesn't need us. The Tzemeach in the world doesn't need us. The Chai in the world doesn't need us. We need them. The moment you don't have Daimim Tzemeach Chai, it's impossible to live. We need it for every step of life. Without the earth, without the oxygen that comes from all of the produce, all of the trees, and of course without all the food, whether it's produce, whether it's animals, etc., etc. But the processes, the whole, what's called the ecosystem of Daimim, Tzemeach Chai, and how they interplay with each other, is indispensable to human life. L'chayr should be fakert. If the medaber is the crown jewel of creation, koteret habriya, b'chir hanevroyim, Adam al'elyon bereishis. So l'chayr, it should be fakert. The Daimim Tzemeach Chai should need the person. That's the chiddush, that the Daimim Tzemeach Chai are needed by the person because the Toyu, the Olam HaToyu is there. Elamaya, it has to be elevated. It has to be elevated. This was the main nekuda that we focused on. Huh? I don't know. You asked me if it's an equal need. I don't know if the word is equal, but there's a give and take. Because the animal soul without the divine soul just could remain in chaos. It's not, and the brain's a behemoth, exactly. Yeah. But you see, Alter Rebbe writes in one of the Maimorim, you see that in animals there's a strength that a person doesn't have. Yeah? You don't start up with a bull. You don't start up, especially certain behemoths. I mean, there's a sheep, there's a goat, but then there's a sher nagach. Yeah? You don't start up with it. So it's not stam a mistake. It represents that Toyu is much stronger than Tikkun. Toyu is much stronger than Tikkun. The Nefesh HaBahamis has in it a strength that's very, very powerful. Yeah. That's why the darkness in a person, the chaos in a person could be so overwhelming. We think it's overwhelming because the darkness, but really, my enemy is my greatest ally. I just have to be able to see the truth. I have to see the niggin, the song behind it, and dissect it and explore it. And then that very experience, that very encounter, that very energy gives birth to your truest identity. And this is, by the way, not an abstract thing. This is in every person's life. If you look, sometimes we need help with this from people who can support us, but if a person looks at those things that bring them the most down, get them the most anxious or depressed or sluggish, we look at the things that challenge us most, that keep us away from our deepest form of life, that alienate us most, that numb us most, whatever it is. If you look deep inside of it, especially if you have a good spiritual microscope called Chassidus, and you look deep inside into it, you'll see that over there lay your greatest strengths. Matzasi David Avdi. Chazal say, Heicha Matzasi Bizdoim. Where did I find David? I found him in Zdaim. Really? You couldn't find him anywhere else? Matzasi David Avdi. Chigefunen, like we say a Mitzia, it was a Mitzia. Wasn't expected, right? A Mitzia means, Ela Mitzia is, you didn't expect it, you found it. That's what a Mitzia means. That's why you have to know whose it is, etc. Because it wasn't expected. It wasn't somebody gave you a gift or somebody sold you. Matzasi David Davdi, it was a Metzia, it wasn't expected. So the Medrash says, where? Heicha Matzasi, Bizdaim. Nobody expected to find David in his daim. Of course, it means that Light and his daughters were in his daim, and from Light's daughter came Mayav. She had a son Mayav, and from Mayav came Rus. And Rus was the mother of Ovid, who was the father of Yishai, who was the father of David. So where was David found? In his daim, in the daughter of Light. In other words, in the genes of Light and his family, over there was already David, the potential for David. That's where Mashiach comes from, his daim. What was it? Stam, it's a joke. It's a cute thing, but Tzasi David Avdi his daim. That's the vart. Yeah. That the Mashiach, the Eir Shel Mashiach, the Eir HaGeula of a person, the redemptive consciousness of a person, you're going to find it in his daim. In Tayu, yeah. In Adamat Tayu, that's where you're going to find it.
Does it have to be hidden there?
Yeah, it's hidden. Yeah. What we sometimes, and this is the power. Sometimes what we run away our whole life from is exactly where we need to be present. We run away our whole life from it because it's intense, it's scary, it's overwhelming, it's dark. But that's where your David HaMelech is. That's where your Eir Shel Mashiach is, which means your own redemption.
It's okay to have a skafia first before you could.
Yeah, you have to know how to relate to it, because if you fall prey to it, you have to be able to extricate the David from this daim, not go deeper. That's why iskafia is so important. Iskafia means that you understand your relationship with it. You're not coming as a parasite, because if not, then the Tayu takes over, and then I'm just more disintegrated. Tayu is disintegration, it's chaos. It's emotions that are not regulated. It's a nervous system that's not regulated. Tikkun is regulated. The Nefesh HaLekis is always in regulation. It knows who it is, it knows who it's not. I told you, it's a mata, it's a stick, it's always aligned. The Nefesh HaBahamis is not, it could be very easy not regulated. It's like an animal. It's thirsty, it's hungry, now it wants this, then it wants this, then it wants this. So deep inside, it has tremendous energy of Tayu. Tikkun can organize the Tayu. Tayu, like he says at the end, that the Daimon Tzemei Chai Nafal Lamata, so Adam Tzarech Levaredam Ula Aloisam L'Sharsham, you have to elevate it back to its source. That's a key point. Right? That's the difference. You don't just accept Tayu as is. It's dark, beautiful, let me become dark. That could be a churban, a bigger churban than anything. Because what happens is, you were given an opportunity to elevate, and instead you became a makabel instead of a mashpia. Whenever you're going down to save somebody, you have to be very, very strong. You know, a lifeguard, if he doesn't know what he's doing, Chalila v'chas could be swept away with the person he's trying to save in the undercurrent. It's a mashal from the Baal Shem Tov, the Toldos Yaakov Yosef brings from the Baal Shem Tov, that a real mashpia is like a lifeguard. You can't stay on top. You have to go into the water. You have to go into the Mayim Rabim. Oisim Malacha b'Mayim Rabim. So it reminds me, the Rebbe once said it of Habreng in Yud Shvat Tovshin Chafei, he said over a word from the Baal Shem Tov. It's in the Zechroinus of the Rebbe Rayatz that was printed then, Sefer HaZechroinus. We say in Tehillim, Kuf Zayin. It's also the Baal Shem Tov instituted to say it Friday before Mincha, Erev Shabbos before Mincha, by Chassidim and many others, they say Hoidu, right? The Hoidu of Erev Shabbos. The Baal Shem Tov said that when you go through the week, it's Arbat Tzrichim Lahaidis. You go through all the four things of Yam, Chayla, Yam, Chayim, Chayla, Yam, Yisurim, B'midbar, and Midbar. And you come out Friday, you're going into Shabbos, you say Hoidu Lashem, you make Ashtikal HaGoimel. So the Baal Shem Tov instituted Erev Shabbos before Mincha to say Kapitel Kuf Zayin. The Alter Rebbe also put it into the Siddur, in his Siddur, together with Pasach Eliyahu when you did Nefesh, to say before Mincha Erev Shabbos. So there's a line over there, Yordei Hayom Ba'aniyos, Oisei Melacha B'mayim Rabim. Those who go down into the sea, Ba'aniyos, Aniyos literally means ships, boats, right, Aniyah. Oisei Melacha B'mayim Rabim, they do work in Mayim Rabim, in the tumultuous waters, which basically means the captains and the navigators of the Aniyos in the times of David HaMelech. So you're talking about, you know, the sailboats that didn't have the Titanic and the other fancy cruise ships. It was on me. You had to know what you're doing. They had to do malacha mayim rabim in heavy water, tumultuous water. Mayim rabim lo yuchel l'chabas. Hey maro ma'aseh Hashem v'niflo oisav b'mitzula. They saw His wonders in the depth. Yeah, v'yomer v'zeruach sa'ara v'terayim gala v'yalu shamayim yerdu sahimis. There's a tumultuousness in the ocean. Vayitzako al Hashem yakim sara l'dimam v'yecheshu galeya. Vayismechu chi yishtoiku. And then the sa'ara, the storm becomes a demama, it becomes quiet. And the galim, the waves, relax. And they're very happy for the silence. That's one of the hagoimos that we make for somebody who goes through the yam and comes out. Baal Shem Tov said like this. Yordei hayam ba'aniyos, the word aniyos, is an interesting word. In Lashon Kodesh, words are very, very significant. Yeah. The word aniyos, it has in it the shirish of ani, ich. Ani, I, right. Aniya means a boat. But there's also another word, oinen. What does an oinen mean in Lashon Kodesh? Grief. Oinenus. When somebody passes away, it's a pchin of an oinen. There's an oinen midiraisa, it's an oinen midirabban. An oinen midiraisa is by b'yoyim, that day midirabban, all the way till the kfura. So it's a din of oinen, and oinen has serious halachas. You potter from all the mitzvahs. So that's an oinen. Oinen is a grief. Lo yachalti ba'oini mimeno. Yeah. We have in Eicha, the kinnis of Tisha B'Av, Vayerev b'Bas Yehuda, ta'aniya va'aniya. Yerushalayim and the Jewish people, Yehuda was overtaken by grief, by aniya, by terrible, terrible grief. So the Baal Shem Tov says, Yordei hayam ba'aniyos refers to two types of people. They come down Yordei hayam, and people who have an aniya, they have a boat. They come into the ocean, and they have safety, they have protection. When you're in a boat, there's a big yam, there can even be a storm, but you have a container, you're safe. Yeah, we call you feel safe, secure, soothed, seeing. And then the ani is in an aniyah. When the ani feels safety, there's an ani, there's an eye that can navigate through the mayim to the water. But you have other people, Yordei hayam ba'aniyah is ta'aniyah va'aniyah. They come into a place of grief and unsafety, and their ani becomes an aniyah. They don't have an aniyah. They're like thrown into the water without a boat. Now swim. And you're trying your whole life literally to keep your head above water. And it's really two types of life. One person is surviving, they're literally surviving, and the other person is alive. You're on a cruise boat, you enjoy the water, geschmack, and if there's even a storm, but what happens, chas v'shalom, that person is in the water itself. Now they're not enjoying the waves, they're not enjoying the sight. They're literally trying to keep their head above water. And I think everybody knows in life, we have different moments, right? You have moments you're like on a cruise ship, you're enjoying the world, and then you're like, you see a daf, daf echad nisdamanli. You see a bretel, you jump on it. You see a tree, you jump on it. You see a person, you jump. Anything, taniya vani, anything to assuage my ire, my angst. I'm literally, it's called coping. You're not living, you're coping. Yordei hayam ba'aniyos, it's two different types of people. Depends what your ani is made up of. If there's an aniyah or there's taniyah v'aniyah. I've heard from the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov says, and then there's oisei melacha b'mayim rabim. Oisei melacha b'mayim rabim are the neshamas that Hashem sends down to do melacha b'mayim rabim, to save all those who ended up in the taniyah v'aniyah and they don't know who their aniyah is. Oisei melacha, they do the melacha of mayim rabim to lift them up from the mayim rabim and bring them back into their boat. Mayim rabim lo yuchlu l'chabos ha'ava unaharis lo yishtafuim yitin ishas kolain beisei ba'ava bois yavuzallah. As it says in Shashirim, the mayim of Torah, Parshas Noach, we learned a few times. The tumultuous waters can't extinguish the love, and if a person gives away all of his wealth to be able to buy this love, bois yavuzallah, Vayivez, it's scorned. You don't give away anything for this type of love. So the Baal Shem says, oisim melacha b'mayim rabim are those that were chosen to go down to the mayim rabim and lift up all those in taniyah v'aniyah and bring them back to the aniyah. Oisim melacha. So the Rebbe said over this whole word barichas, he explained it, and then he said, "En amalek zeiten hat man gekent wissen wer belangt in welches Sug." In the olden days, you could know which one of the three categories you're in. You could say, "I am aniyah like this. I'm aniyah like this." The first person could say, atzmi. I'm busy taking care of myself, my boat. The second person is like, I can't help anybody else. I'm just a victim. I need help. And the third person could say, I'm here to help. He says, Heintige Zeiten, wer is wer. And everybody has to see themselves as connected to all three. It's interesting. Huh? Yeah. And you see, there's a moment you're safe for Aniya, there's a moment Taniya v'Aniya, and he says, and throughout, be oisem malacha b'mayim rabim. Keep your heart open to everybody else. Be oisem malacha b'mayim rabim. Don't cut yourself off. Yeah. In the lashon of this maimed, that's the chiluk of Toyu and Tikkun. When a person is aligned with their source, so they're in a boat. There's mayim rabim, but you know who you are. You could come into a situation, there's a lot of chaos, but you don't go out of your tikkun, you don't go out of your clarity. You stay connected. And that's a very, very deep blessing. They once asked Rabbi Yitzchak Varker, what's a Ayid? What's a Jew? So you know what he said? He said a Jew is somebody who can dance uninhibitedly when he's sitting in one place. Yeah. He can yell while he's silent, and he's alone even among 1,000 people. The Shimshon Astrapala once said, Toiva haprishus im habriyas, v'habdidus b'soich b'nei adam. Toiva haprishus im habriyas, v'habdidus b'soich b'nei adam. You understand what that means? It's good to be a parush when you're together with people, and to remain b'didus, to remain unique, alone, b'soich b'nei adam, among people. In other words, there was a shitta to be a parush, you run away from everybody. You go onto an attic for 60 years, and you parush from the world. That wasn't the derech HaBaal Shem Tov, ki yadua, fakert. Oisem malacha b'mayim rabim. But can you still retain Vayivez Yaakov levadoi, even b'soich b'nei adam? B'soich b'nei adam. That's not so pashut. You know, it's easy. I could run away. I could just go into my own little attic, my ivory tower, and serve God. The stachnat kavon of dira b'tachtoinim is to come in, to be integrated. Oisem malacha b'mayim rabim. But to remain anchored, Vayivez Yaakov levadoi, oh, das is shana zach. That's tikkun. Yeah. But for this tikkun, then there's the second aniyah. The second aniyah is, I don't know who I am. Taniya v'aniyah. That's why there's torture. That's why there's grief. What's grief? There's tremendous grief because I think I'm one thing, I'm another thing. There's expectation. There's shattered dreams. Everything is broken. That's olam hatayu. But oisem melacha b'mayim rabim, going into that space, allows your ani to become a much deeper ani. That's the yidid tzarech chali of the nefesh halakis, by coming dafka into the nefesh habamas. And that's the secret. Whenever a person goes through any of these types of challenges, and we do, the oisem melacha b'mayim rabim, whenever you're encountering that space of tayu, you have to realize that if you go a little deeper, you're uncovering your deepest potentials, your deepest resources. So don't be afraid of those spaces, not in yourself, and also not in others. Even though they create a frazzle, they might become frazzled, which is what tayu means. It's so overwhelming, and it's truly there. But that's where the deepest light of the person lay. Matzasi David Avdi is in Zdaim. You just have to know how to extract it, how to elevate it, how to sublimate it, not become part of the problem. Yeah. The Alter Rebbe writes in one of my modim, that's why we eat after davening. Because whatever you eat, you're going into Olam HaToyu. Food has a lot of energy, but it's covered over. So he says, first you have to connect with your nefesh halakis, and then you can go to Toyu. If you want to be oisem malacha b'mayim rabim, if you're not connected to the boat, or you don't know how to swim, don't go to mayim rabim, Stay in the boat better. Spring nicht rein. So apart from the Kotzker Rebbe and Siach Sarfei Kodesh, the Gemara says in Maseches Eruvin, Daf Chaf Aleph I think it is, that Shlomo HaMelech was masaken 2 takonos, Eruvin and Netilas Yadayim. Eruvi Chatzeres, Shabbos, and Netilas Yadayim. Wash your hands. He was masaken it for Kachim, before you ate Karbonis. Later it was Nastaken for Truma and for all the bread. But Shlomo HaMelech was masaken these 2 things: the concept of Netilas, washing your hands before eating bread, at least certain types of bread, and an Eruvin, Eruv Chatzeres. So the Gemara says in Eruvin that when Shlomo HaMelech did this, there was a baskel, a voice that came out of heaven, Im chacham b'ni yismach libi gam ani. When you see my son is so wise, I have such a brilliant child, the father says, my heart rejoices. So the question is, why did these two takanas represent Chacham B'Nips, the Chacham of Shlomo HaMelech? So the Kotzker Rebbe says, because Eruvin and Netilas Yadayim are a paradox. Eruvin comes from the word taruvis, mixing, because it mixes chatzeres, it mixes reshuyas. If we're all living in one bungalow colony or in one apartment building, so the Chacham were guys that you can't carry in the public areas because it looks like a Reshus Harabim because a lot of people use it, even though it's not. And an Eruv Chatzeres means you put the food in one house, so it's like we're all living in one house, like we're all tenants in one house. We have a meal in that house, so it makes from all the citizens, all the residents in the apartment building or the hotel or the bungalow colony or the city, it makes one Metzias. So it takes separate people and turns them into one cohesive whole, like Mamash and Mishpacha. I'm allowed to carry in my own house, even if there's a lot of kids in the house, because it's one Metzias, it's one Balabayas, one Mishpacha. So the whole apartment building becomes like a Mishpacha, the whole city, the whole bungalow. That's the concept of Eruv Chatzeres. That's the Eruv in Miloshin Taruvis. You mix, you integrate. What's Netilas Yadayim? Reina hand, clean hands. Yadayim askani yasein. As I state, the Yadayim veistach, they're busy. Stam Yadayim Shniyas. The Chachamim were geyser that Stam Yadayim, if you didn't watch them, they have a gather of Tumah. It's called Sheni L'Tumah. It's a gather of Sheni. And therefore, if you would touch something like Truma, the Truma would become what's called a Shlishi. You remember our shiurim on Tumah and Tada? B'chanin is Gana Kayanim. Okay, Psachim. So that's why there's Netilas Yadayim. That's why you have to clean your hands. You always have to clean your hands, especially before you're touching something holy. And because of that, it's already all the bread, because they shouldn't get confused between Kayanim and Yisrael and whatever. Okay, that's the Pratim and the Halach. So the Kotzker Rebbe said like this: usually, people that have Netilas Yadayim are not good with Eruvin, and people who are good with Eruvin are not good with Netilas Yadayim. Those who are really integrated with people, they mission sich mention. You know, they have the gift of gab. They're social. You call them party animals. They're good. Yadayim askani, you're saying. You know, they say askanim. Under the word askanim, but maybe not such a bad word. They're born to be already askanim. Already after by their bris, they're already askanim. Gebeirena askanim. Behandled, and whatever, you know. It's people, they have a comment for everybody. They notice your new glasses and your new shoes and you have a new sweater. They come to a chasen and they have a comment for everybody. They know that you moved and you moved in, you opened a new business and you sold the business and you're going bankrupt, you're almost going bankrupt. They weisen out. Yadayim askani, you say. Mishmush madayim. Yadoy bakol v'yad kol boy. A bungalow colony, very good, yeah. A bungalow colony. So it's Eruvin, they're very mixed in. But Netilas Yadayim, Reina hand, it's very hard to remain so pure. And those who have Reina hand, they're usually in their own little orbit. The Chacham of Shlomo HaMelech was, he was Mesaken, Sai Eruvin and Sai Netilas Yadayim. To be able to be truly present with people and still maintain the purity of your hands, the purity of your soul, that's Chachma. And you could say it's Dafka Chacham, which is Kayach Ma, which is Bittul. Because when it's Kayach HaBittul, you could remain fully present. You don't have to detach and run away and get angry at the world and just krechts that everybody's corrupt and everybody's evil. I'm the only tzaddik, Hadar, me and Noach are the only one. The whole place is mushchis, tzaddik, and you run away emotionally. You don't have to do that. You could be in the Mayim Rabbim and see everything kamoishu, and yet you don't get entangled. You don't get farhakt. You don't get faplonted. You don't get mixed up in it. Netilas Yadayim, your hands remain pure. And then you could actually be mashpia, because you're not part of the problem, you're part of the solution. But that's a balance that is so delicate, because it's very easy to run away and detach. And you can also be present and become part of it. Right? That's the balance always between Toyu and Tikkun. To be able to be present for the sparks of Toyu, but to be present for the sparks of Toyu. Not to fall and get sucked in to the darkness and the chaos. Because then I don't become part of the problem. Then I don't become part of the solution. I become part of the problem. My father was a journalist. You know, he had a newspaper, the Allgemeine Journal. When Yitzchak Rabin was killed, it was, I think, Nunhei, Tovshin Nunhei, yeah? Yeah? Which year was it? Do you remember? Nun Gimel? Cheshvan, yeah? Yud Aleph Cheshvan, I think it was. Tzai Shabbos. 93, yeah? So my father wanted to go to Israel to cover the funeral as a journalist. So he asked me to come along with him. So he got a ticket. Nachman Elbaim was a travel agent, the famous Gerech Chussid, and he got us a ticket. So we were on the plane. So there were a lot of dignitaries who were going back to Israel for the funeral. I remember the Mayor Giuliani was there. So there was a Yid there who was the head of Agudas Yisrael in Israel for many years, Reb Menachem Parush, Olav Shalom. Reb Menachem Parush was a character, and he was in politics for decades. So he knew the system. He was there already from the 1940s. He was already involved in this already the 1990s. Huh? Yeah. He was. Now he has his son, Reb Meir Parush.
His father was ready.
Reb Menachem's father, Reb Moshe. Yeah. So Reb Menachem Parush told me. So I was on the plane with him. Said, "Verbracht a bissel." So he told me a very interesting story. 95, yeah. I remember. Nun Hey, November 95, yeah. I think Yud Aleph Cheshvan. Was Mitzvah Shabbos da. Schon auf einer Emes Rabbin, but was er hat angemacht with Oslo, with his Chavedim is unbelievable. Yeah, pure Toyo. Yeah. They used to call the Karbanot HaShalom, yeah. The victims of peace that we still have. Yeah. It's what happens when Jews don't know who they are. But I'll call upon him. So Menachem Parush told me then that he was once on Yechidus by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I think we said it was in the 1950s, maybe the 60s. The shitta of the Rebbe, B'chal of Lubavitch, the Rebbe Rayat, the Rebbe was to always remain apolitical, especially in Israel. So they never ran for the Knesset. They never had a maflega in the Knesset. The Rebbe said that he wants to be able to be mashpi on everybody, from the right to the left. The moment he's in a party, it's right away, you're a maflega. So therefore he always stayed away from it. There was one time that he said that they should vote for a particular maflega, when there was a direct war on the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, Tov Shemem Tes, but that was only once, an exception, and never before, never after that. There was somebody who made his own party because for one reason, and that's what the Rebbe said, that they vote for Gimel. I'll call upon him. So Parush told me. So he said I was once on Yechidus, and he was the head of Agudas. So he was a man of politics, of maflektiyut. So he tells the Rebbe, "Ich verstehe nicht. You're trying to build Yiddishkeit in Eretz Yisrael. If you would have a few seats in the Knesset, you can channel money and help the budget and have influence b'chlal on the government, much more. You'll have political clout. Now you don't have any political clout, nothing. You need favors from anybody. Everybody that Rebbe used to ask, it's all favors. You don't have any koyach." So he said that he learned from his father-in-law. He says, "Our avodah is harvatzas haTorah and avos Yisrael without anything. And once you get here, it's just a different world, and therefore it's much better to stay away, and you can be mashpia in much deeper ways." So he tells me, "Zog ich zum Rebbe." So he says, I tell the Rebbe, "Mir will nicht havatzas haTorah. You think we don't want to spread Torah in Eretz Yisrael? You think we want politics? Ich sag dem Rebbe, ich sag, sa prusdur, kadei shetikonis letraklin. The ganz politik is a prusdur, it's a corridor. So for you, letkonis letraklin, the palace is your shamayim, mit Torah, mit Yideh. It's nicht maflektiyut, it's only a prusdur. That's what it is. Was meint er?" So he tells me, he says, the Lubavitcher Rebbe is giving a kluge Yid. Yeah, so what is he supposed to answer Menachem Parush? He says, guckt auf mir. Schmeichelt, he smiles. Says, "Der Menachem is halt gerecht, aber amol wird man verplontert in dem Prusdur." He says, "You're right, but sometimes you can get entangled, lost in the Prusdur." You're right, it's not a Prusdur, it's the Traklen. He says, "Ich hab verstanden, hat verstanden," and it was good. Amol wird man verplontert in dem Prusdur. Those were the words. Yeah. But it brings out a nakuda. It's taka prusdor. But you're going to get verplant. Verplanted means it's very hard. Taka hachana, and it's all good, and it's only for the good tachlis. But you forget, because there's a lot of energy there, there's a lot of temptation. So that's always the balance that's necessary when you talk about these inyanim, to be able to understand that it's a hachana for sublimation. It's waiting for sublimation. It's not for the person to fall deeper into the chayshach. Okay, so now let's see weiter. Yeah. V'hine gimel. So, is gimel. You understand? Vehin, a little bit or a lot? You feel it. Was sagt er? Vehine. Bebirur hain. No. Vehine bebirur hain yanam shalamata. When it comes to birur, and the word here is birur. As we explained last time, what's birur? From the word barur and bairir. Avodas habirurim. Why is it called avodas habirurim? Clarity. Clarity means to identify. This is tayu, this is tikkun. This is nefesh elikiz, this is nefesh bahamas. The moment you have birur, you could do bairir. Right? What's the hachana to the malacha of bairir? You have to know this is good, this is bad. In halacha it's called psilus and toiv. In the laws of Shabbos, Siman Shin Yud Ches and Shulchan Aruch. What's bairir? Bairir, psilus mitaych eichel. This psilus is the bad. You have lettuce, this is rotten lettuce, this is good lettuce, and you want to separate. So the ability to do bairir is because it's barur. If you don't know what's what, you can't do bairir. The first thing in bairir is always, this is good, this is bad. This I want to eat, this I don't want to eat. In middle of the week, it's not a problem to do birurim. On Shabbos, you have to know how to be bairir, because bairir is asr on Shabbos. Avodas birurim is asr. But the concept is, it has to be barur. And then once it's barur, now, you don't want it mixed in. And that's the key. The key is always the confusion. Eitz hadas, toiv v'ra. The confusion, you don't know what's toiv, you don't know what's ra. Yeah, you have to know. The moment you call it out, everything is different. The fact that a person has all the elements of tayu and all the chaos and all the darkness and all the coping mechanisms of animal consciousness, that's not the problem. The problem is it's not called out. It presents itself as, ashkebahagra, at least as normal. The moment you could say, okay, this is a moment of tayu. Okay, good. Label, tayu. Like I told you, it's Maisa with Reb Nachman. I don't care if you eat the grain, just put a sign, ich bin meshuga. It's fine, bissel meshuga, no problem. Everybody has a right to be a bissel meshuga. I told you that by Greenwald from Skver, the Rosh Hashiva told me here, there was somebody in the tent who was spewing stupid things about Israeli soldiers, whatever, real stupid things. So it was hard to hear. So I made the mistake of trying to explain to the person, as though there's certain people you can explain things to. So Rabbi Greenwald tells me, he says, nach 2000 Jahren in Galus hat jede Kehille volle Recht zu produzieren Meshugayim. After 2,000 years of a crazy Galus, every community has a right to produce Meshugayim. It's fine. It's the way it is. It's been a long, long exile. People go crazy. It's normal. They become distorted. And we all have that. The question is, can you label it? The moment you can label it, that's already birur. That's called birur, barur. Now there could be avodas birur. And then you could see it for what it is, and then you could find a spark inside the enemy. You could see how your great enemy, your great challenge is really your greatest ally. It was just waiting to be redeemed, to be liberated. The fear of the unknown is very, very deep, and the protectors and all of the defenders that we create that really, distance us from ourselves are hiding something very, very precious. And when you can expose it, there's an oitzer there. There's always an oitzer. So he says, in this birur, there's two types of birurim of tayu. There's dealing with daimim tzemeh chai. That would be anything in the physical world. Anything. From money to food. From wine to power. Anything in the world, anything that you touch. That's part of daimim tzemeh chai, that's one type of birur. Daimim is inanimate, tzemeh is what grows, chai is the living. But anything, any interaction with those elements of the world that are what they are. But then there's the birur of sug hamedaber. Then there's dealing with people. That's a whole different inyan. Shebenegei l'sug hamedaber yesh kama pratim v'inyanim b'ifan habirur shelo yeshnem b'birur the daimim tzemeh chai. The birur of medaber is a speaking, thinking person, a medaber, not daimim tzemeh chai. When I'm dealing with a piece of bread, lechem, it's tayu taka. But when you're dealing with a medaber, there's unique qualities here that don't exist in the other elements. Tehine daimim tzemech v'chai einam bali b'chira. Daimim tzemech and chai, they are what they are. They're not bali b'chira, they're not making conscious choices. V'lechei nasa birur shalem aydei zeshadam misasik imam ba'aveidas soy. So the main avoid is you. You're the issue. They are what they are. They're created the way they're created, and they're just manifesting the energy that they're manifesting. In many ways, they can't go out of alignment. There's nothing a squirrel can do to take it out of alignment. There's nothing a bee or a butterfly or a mosquito or a deer or a bear can do to go out of alignment. The Rebbe says in Tanya, Perek Chav Dalet, that a person who's misaligned, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Yitush Kadmach. Yitush Kadmach means a mosquito precedes you. Why? Because a mosquito can't go out of alignment. It is what it is. Taka klipas naiga, it obscures, but it remains a channel for the energy that it's supposed to manifest in the world, and it never leaves that 24/7. Because its genetic makeup is a person can go out of alignment. A person can go out of that place. A person can create a rupture and become an avodah zarah, a replacement for Achdus Hashem. So there's a big difference. Daimim tzemeh chai is daimim tzemeh chai. But he says, but homedaber, it's already a different yin. That's what he says. The birur of daimim tzemeh chai is always about you. It's where you are. So when you're touching the apple, or you're touching the lechem, or you're touching the daimim, or you're dealing with the chai, it could be a piece of meat, a piece of steak. It could be your parnasa, it could be your money, whatever it is that you're dealing with in a person's life that has to do with the physical world, they are what they are. When you're dealing with a medaber, in Olam Hazeh, over here there's bchira, so there's consciousness, so there's choice. So choice puts you in two different categories. Like we spoke on Shabbos, choice also means that I could choose the other way. Choice comes with a price. Choice means that I have to make a choice. That's the power of life, the power of human life. By definition, if you can't make an opposite choice, so choice doesn't mean anything. The only reason that choice has value is because I can also make an opposite choice. I could choose you, and I can unchoose you. I could choose something else. We spoke on Shabbos in the Maimah that we learned from Torah Ered, Parshas Mishpatim. In a marriage, for example, right? People see the challenge in the marriage as an obstacle to the marriage, but really, it's not. That's what makes the marriage the marriage. The fact that you can not choose makes your choice valuable. If I would be forced in the relationship, that's not a relationship. It's not relational. I'm just forced. It's the fact that you need to choose. Midaita, not balkarcha. And the same is true the man and the woman. It's midaita. That's what gives it its power. You're present. You are present. You could have also chosen the opposite. So when there's a conflict in a relationship, the conflict is only a hachana for the achdus. The conflict only means that this is an opportunity to choose. Conflict means that there's a part of you that's going to pull you away. Of course, that's why there's a choice. That's what makes it a choice. The same is true in avodas Hashem. Dira b'tachtoina means that there's a resistance. That resistance, that's where God wants to be. That's what makes it valuable. That's what makes it shtei chatzotzus, like in the previous Maimer, shtei chatzotzus. So the concept of medaber here, there's a concept of bchira. So he says over here, there's already a few efanim in the bidder. You have him, it sees that the medaber himself chooses toiv. In other words, chooses lihikana, to be subservient to kedusha, to holiness, and to be elevated. An example for this was the days of Shlomo Melech. The pasuk describes in Melachim Aleph Pedekei, the Tanakh, the Navi describes in Melachim how from all the nations and cultures they came to hear the wisdom of Shlomo. Kings of different regions and countries came to bask and bathe in the glory and the brilliance. The Tanakh describes Barichas in Melachim Aleph, Perek Hey, Perek Yud, with Shlomo's influence. First of all, his wealth, but not just his physical wealth, his spiritual wealth. His empire extended. It was the greatest moment of bliss in Jewish history. Right? The Medrash says that from Avram to Shlomo is 15 generations. Shlomo Melech, Avram is the beginning of the moon, Rish Chodesh, and Shlomo Melech is Kaim Siyada Bashlemus, is the 15th day of the month when the moon was whole. That was Shlomo Melech. Shlomo Meloshin Shleimus, Meloshin Shalom. And then after Shlomo Melech, the moon starts waning, shrinking, and there was another 15 generations till Tzidkiyahu, who was the last king of Yehuda, and that's when the Churban Bayis Rishon happened, and that's when the moon fades into oblivion, and Kavayachal disappears, and then there's Ischatshus, a new Rish Chodesh. But a tzimtzum, right? But the reason Shlomo HaMelech is called the 15th day is because the Jewish people had this wholeness, and part of it was that Shlomo HaMelech influenced the world. So he says the nations, people they were so enthralled, the presence that Shlomo HaMelech inspired, the wisdom, the depth. It was like bees attracted to honey. Literally, they came from everywhere. And the pasuk says, Malkas Shva, the queen of Shva. She came and she remained with Shlomo. And Shlomo, it says there was nothing that Shlomo held back from her. He shared with her and she gave him enormous amounts of gifts. And the transformation the Tanakh describes was indescribable. What is all this? Somewhere their sparks were ignited. You have a big fire that's created and the sparks start becoming subsumed. It's called Kiruv HaMoyer El HaNitzutz. All the sparks go back when you have a huge shalheves, a huge fire. So sparks, if there's a little fire, they will gravitate and be swallowed up in the big fire. That's the mashal of Shlomo. He created such a fire in the world, so it's angehert. Malkus Shva in her own palace, in her own little winkele, right? Her nitzutz was ignited. It's very deep nekuda here. When you have such a light in the world, but derech memela, wherever there's a spark, they feel it, they sense it. And they already come, they make their way. And this happens in life, people make their way somewhere, they don't know why, but their nitzutz knows why. Something touched you. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Afal gavdiu lechazi, maz lechazi. Yeah, the Gemara says in Maseches Megillah, yeah. Hilchas hachag b'chag. But it says Daniel and his friends, Chardu, they started to tremble. Daniel knew why, they didn't know why. So the Gemara says, Iu lechazi, maz lechazi. The Alter Rebbe teaches mazli doesn't just mean it's a mazel. Mazel is the shayrish haneshama. It's mazel. It trickles down into the consciousness. The super conscious soul feels everything. The shayrish haneshama knows everything because it's a chelik elakami mal. It's connected to the frequency of the whole existence. So it feels. The question is how much I feel consciously. So some people are connected, they feel right away, and some people it's all unconscious. But Malkus Shvaz Nitzutz, it was gravitating to the source, and it felt that the source is Shlomo HaMelech. So this is a dohayben of art, that you have those people in history that bring down the frequency of Achdus Hashem into the world, and all the Nitzutzes start feeling it. And they start gravitating. And that's what happened by Shlomo HaMelech. Malkus Shvaya. Huh?
Which country is Malkus Shva?
Oh, which country?
Is it Sheba? Is it India?
Usually they say Sheba today. Sheba, India, in the region of India, yeah. That's how far she came. In other words, that was like the remote corner of the world at the time. The Queen of Sheba, yeah. Malkus Shva is the Queen of Sheba, yeah.
Which is their main teachings really coming from Sheba.
And what's the idea here? A lot of the Eastern, the Zohar brings, a lot of the Eastern disciplines and religions and philosophies that have enthralled, many Jews today, Buddhism and Hinduism and this, it comes from that area, Sheba. Huh? Yeah. The Zohar connects it. Avram Avinu had the children of Keturah, and he sent them to Eretz Kedem, to the east, and he gave them gifts. So Rashi says, Shem Tuma Masalem, and Zohar it says that he gave them deep spiritual gifts. Huh? Yeah. In Buddhism, one of the biggest mantras is called Brahman, Avram, yeah, it's one of their biggest things, Brahman, from the Lashon Avram. So I'll call upon it. So when Malkus Shva comes, it's not just a person comes.
All the castes came from...
So basically, yeah.
Until 6 came and wanted to unify everything.
So she came to Shlomo HaMelech, and the Torah says that Shlomo HaMelech, the Tanakh says he shared with her, and she just took it in, and then went back. And it says that she went back. So here you have the hashpah of Shlomo HaMelech's Chacham, which was Chacham Elokis, the divine wisdom, the wisdom of Torah, how it influenced the whole world. But how did this happen? There was no force. There was no even confrontation. They had an edelkeit to feel it, and the sparks gravitated. The sparks knew where to go. They felt that this is where they need to go to be able to find their niggin, to find their song. Yeah. Even when it was hidden, it wasn't completely hidden. So Shlomo HaMelech's presence can affect them.
It's interesting, till now they have the same model as in Hasidus. They say the person doesn't live in one space. You can live anywhere where you had it.
Yeah.
But they don't have the time. They don't have it over there.
It's before Matan Torah, yeah.
No, that's interesting. They have the same parallel, the same story.
Listen, a lot of spiritual ideas that you'll see, you're going to find in Kabbalah, you'll find in Chassidus, the focus on Dira B'Tachtainim, they write B'Tachtainim, that's a focus of Yiddishkeit, Torah, mitzvahs, halacha, etc. the channels for the divine energy to bring it down into the physical world and into the physical body. Erevin and Natilas Yadayim, right? The integration of Erevin and Natilas Yadayim. Toiva haprishus im habriyas, habdidus besoich b'nei adam. Oisim alacha b'mayim rabbi. So this is one b'china. It's one nekuda. There's a story that one of the Talmidei HaMagid, one of the students of the Magid, I think, I don't remember all the details, but I think the story is, he was struggling on an idea in Torah. He couldn't find an answer. And one night, in the middle of the night, he had a vision or an epiphany, and he got an answer. In the morning, he came to shul, and a Pasha Tayyid told him the same vart. So he went to the Magid. He had such a chlishus hadas. He was working for so long on this, and now this person just said it. So the Maggid told him something very powerful. He said, "Du hast das mamshach gewen in der Welt. B'shas wird nimshach in der Welt, jetzt kann es jeder gefinnen." You brought it into the world. You accessed it. Once it's accessed in the world, now everybody has access to it. Yeah, Maggid Meshurim, right? Oh, B'S Yosef, sorry. Yeah, Maggid. That's how I got mixed up. Yeah. So, the Maggid Meshurim told us to the B'S Yosef. Yeah. The Mesidus Nefesh, the Moreh Nayim says that. Yeah, Avram Avinu brought the Koyach HaMesidus Nefesh. Once he brought it in, already everyone feeds off it. So it's a very powerful idea. So I once heard the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe Fabrengen said it over, and he said that's pshat. In the Zohar, there's always a lashon Pasach Reb Shimon. What's Pasach Reb Shimon? In Gemara, you have Amar Reb Shimon, Amar Reb Meir, Amar Reb Yossi. In Zohar, it's Pasach Reb Shimon. So he says Pasach means et ufgefen ta Pesach. He opened the door to this awareness. In Pnimiyus HaTorah, not a Pasach, he opened up the confidence. Pasach, he opened up a Pesach. He brought a new consciousness into the world. Now, it's here. Everyone has access to it. Obviously, you have to be refined. But it's like he tuned in to a certain, channel. He opened up that channel, and now there's a flow. So if you're open, you'll experience that flow. So these are things that happen in a way that a person sometimes, it's not so his galus, he's not aware of it. But an comes into the world, that's the beginning of Pasach Reb Shimon.
Also, the Zohar says Tachazi, not
Tachazi versus Tashmaya. Re'iyah versus Shmiya. Of course. This is the responsibility of a person. Like the Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva, that the world is balanced, right? And Asa Maisa Echad, you tip the scale. So it's not just some mystical word in the Rambam, you tip the scale. It means that a person's energy is interconnected with everybody's energy. Kol Yisrael Arevim, the Baal Shem Tov says Arevim from the word mixed. And Arevim, the word zis. We're sweet one to another. And therefore Arevim al Pinigla, we're responsible. But it begins with the inyan of Arevim. So when a person understands that, and the truth is, and more sensitive people are more sensitive to this. They feel it more. And therefore they know that what they're channeling in the world is not just for them. It opens up a Pesach. It opens up a Psicha. It's literally a Pesach. Once a person opens the door, everybody will walk through the door. There was a wall. Nobody could walk through it. You open the Pesach, you're not going to be the only one. I'm also going to walk through. He's also going to walk through. Everybody will walk through. 100 years later, they'll walk through, but it was all because of that Pesach. That's the difference between tzaddikim who bring a new consciousness into the world. It's a different league. It's a different magnitude. So you could see years later, it's a new comes into the world. It's a Pesach. It's not just they were good people and they were holy people. That's one avoid. It's a tremendous thing. But it's a Pesach. It brings in a new vocabulary. It's a new frequency of energy. It changes it forever. The Arizal was sitting with a few people in Svas. He didn't have, what do they call it? Parenses? What do you guys call it? Huh? Yeah. And, a couple of Yidden was sitting there, right? But the Eid is still felt. The Baal Shem Tov also didn't have parenses. Baal Shem Tov had 60 Talmidim, and not everybody was there a whole time. But the Eid is still felt. It's Eir Shiva Sayamim. Well, because it's not about, it's nice to have a lot of people, avad, it's a good thing, and but that's not the Nekuda. The Nekuda is Pasach. You can have a person sitting with 100,000 people and there's a garnish, it's better if he stayed home. Right? It was a Pasach. There was a flow of a new consciousness into the world. So Shlomo HaMelech, that presence, that oir, yeah, a goy at the end of the world, Malchus Shvav, was hat sie mit Shlomo HaMelech? But that's the word. Her edelkeit was touched. And this is a pchin. It says Shlomo is me'ein de lo asid lavai. But by Shlomo it didn't happen. At the end of his life, things changed. But this is a nekuda of the inyan of Gula. So that's one knife. Shezeu when birur ha'medaber shebaylam hazeh shesharshim mitoyu ayidei bnei Yisrael shesharshim mishemad tikun. Malchus Shva and the other chachamim, their shirish was toyu. Their source was toyu. So they had tremendous energy, but it wasn't integrated. It wasn't organized. It wasn't regulated. Toyu is never regulated. Toyu never knows what it is. Regulation is you're anchored. Toyu is not regulated. That's why it's chaos. Tikkun is always regulated. That's why you could never sublimate Toyu when you're dysregulated. Never. Because you're part of Toyu. Toyu can't sublimate Toyu because it's part of the chaos. To deal with the chaos, you have to be outside of the chaos, right? Yisro came to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, chaos. I'm from outside. I'm telling you, it's chaos here. Va'ata sechze, novel tibo. It's from the outside. When you're part of the company, you're part of the chaos. You're not going to fix the chaos. Right? That's the power of bringing in somebody from the outside. We're always afraid of somebody from the outside. Wer is b'chlal? Wer is Es nish mishaluni. Thank God there's nish mishaluni. Thank God. You could hear what he has to say. He has something to say. If it would be mishaluni, he wouldn't have anything to say. He would just be part of your column.
How is it possible that Moshe get advice from Israel when Moshe was regulated presence of
That's a good question. You remember Shabbos? There was a Russian politician, they make a joke that he said, I have great news for you, comrades. We're standing at the edge of the abyss and we're making great progress. So, we're going to take giant step forwards. So when you're part of the issue, you can't see the issue. You're part of it. That's the issue. So you need that outside perspective, that outside energy. So Toyu can't be Mevarer Toyu. But they felt the Shlomo HaMelech, which is Neshamas Yisrael, which comes from Ma'av Tikkun, so they came there. She came. But then there's a different type of Toyu. There's a Toyu was is nish great. That the Medaber in Elam is choosing the opposite direction. Is choosing to go deeper into chaos, deeper into dysregulation. It's not so simple. The way the Rebbe said it in Yiddish is sometimes they put in the words in Yiddish just to give it, the taste, because the Rebbe would say them in Yiddish, not in Lashon Kodesh. It's written in Lashon Kodesh. It's not a simple thing. Malchus Shva was open, her heart was open. Fakert, she came on her own. Shlomo HaMelech didn't even have to send a message to her. That's how deep it was. When somebody shows up, they're receptive. But sometimes they choose the opposite. Now they're resisting it. And the reason they're resisting it is not because there's no sparks. It's because the sparks are really, really buried deep inside. So they are completely disassociated, even from their disassociation. Malchus Shva felt that she was disassociated from herself. So she was yearning. Help me integrate. But when you're disassociated from your disassociation, jetzt ist Arachmanas. Yeah. And then what was even more, you turn your disassociation into a religion and into the ultimate ideal. So now there's nothing to deal with it. As long I don't know, maybe somebody will educate me. But now I do know, but chachamim heima lahara. Your knowledge now destroys you more than not now. Not knowing, I don't know. People who say I don't know are in a pretty good place. Yeah. But when I don't know that I don't know, and even worse, I turn my knowledge, my ignorance into knowledge. Now it's very, very difficult. Hanoichi Hester Aster, the Mashandav says, the Hester is behester.
But it's a part of Hashem's plan.
That's true. That's why we're not afraid. We're not afraid. That's the whole point.
Not only that, they preserved something that we lost.
Yeah.
That's why we shouldn't.
They're preserving sparks of Tayu, and not only that, as it says, The reason you people disassociate so deeply is because they have such a powerful energy that they're frightened of. On some level, there's a pneutzis of tayu. I mean, you have to know how to say it exactly, but there's obviously something there. And you see it in a person's life. Sometimes, the higher the energy is, the more it gets blocked. Because it's so powerful, it's so intense, the klipa can't be a thin klipa. The klipa has to be such a thick klipa, because the only way you could cover something so powerful is if the cover is as powerful as what it's covering. So the safe and the lock on the safe has to be much more. So suddenly you see a person and the safe is so heavy and the lock is, oh my God, and you want to run away. No. The reason the lock is so deep and so big and the safe is so secure and the vault is impenetrable is because the klipa knows that if you penetrate it, oy va'avoy, this is the end of it. So it will protect it with every last bone in its body and every last fiber of its being. It's like when you're having an arm wrestle with somebody and the person is losing, right? At that moment, they're going to come back with every ounce of energy. Why? Not because they're winning, because they're losing and they know it. And suddenly you're like, oh my God, I was winning. I know. But right before you win, you're going to have to try harder. That's exactly what it does. So the fact that you're so disassociated often is because it's so fearful of what would happen if you're not disassociated. What is it blocking? You always have to ask yourself, what is it what are you blocking? What are you afraid to feel? I think I told you once, I once asked one of my mentors, I feel blah sometimes. You know what blah means, yeah? Blah is blah. You know what means feeling blah? You feel blah? Huh? Kids don't know what blah is. You have to reach a certain age. Yeah. You mean because they never feel it, or because they always feel it? Whatever, one of the two. Blah is a feeling you're not upset, you're not upset. You're just like, it's like everything is just dull. There's probably a few bachrim in your yeshiva who have it, huh? Indifferent, yeah. They once asked a Jew, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy? So he said, I don't know and I don't care. Yeah, that's the difference between ignorance and apathy. So the person said something very profound, which is really the nakuda here, and said, speak to the blondness and ask the blondness, what are you hiding? What are you afraid that you're going to be feeling if you're not there? It was very, very profound. What are you afraid? I do it adayay mazah. I say, what's going on? What are you afraid? What are you protecting me from? There's an emotion you're afraid of. What are you scared? It's actually in its own way, it creates tayu, but it's trying to protect you. That's what all klipa does. We just don't know that it's a protection. The klipa becomes a substitute. Right, so the work with the animal soul is always asking, what are you protecting? And when the protection is so intense, you know there's something very, very special over there. Churchill once said that in a time of war, the bodyguard, what's the word? In a time of war, you have to protect the lies with you have to protect the truth with a lot of bodyguards of lies. When there's so many bodyguards of lies, don't get afraid. When you're so disassociated, wow, what caused you to be disassociated? What pain, what energy, what treasure, what gift did you have that your klipa felt that if it's not going to disassociate you, you won't survive? And it's very practical, this, by the way. You have sometimes children who have the deepest emotions in the world. And because their emotions were so deep and sensitive, they had to go to the other extreme. They had to cut themselves off from their emotions because for them to feel, it would be too much. It's their gift. They know how to feel. So what happens now 30 years later? Pure chaos. The guy doesn't feel. Doesn't feel his wife, doesn't feel his kids, doesn't feel himself. Certainly can't feel God, doesn't feel anything. He thinks he's a dead man walking. And really, his klipa is just protecting a beautiful, beautiful heart that is so full of love and light, but he never knew it. So the thicker the klipa is, it's just a raya that it's kol hagavaya b'yos. It's a much higher nitzitz, but it's in tayu. Tayu means it's creating pure chaos. It's not part of your tikkun, it's part of your tayu. So you have a malchus shva who can feel the light and gravitate towards it. That's gavaldik. But sometimes I decide to go the opposite extreme. So now somebody is now poking on your vault, come out from your heart, and I get triggered. I'm like, this is not safe, and I go deeper into the safe, deeper. You make a new layer, you hire a new bodyguard. By the time you're 52 or 62, you got like 100 layers of bodyguards till they get close to the cage. And in the cage, you have another few bodyguards. And the bottom line is, everyone is distant. So here, you have an example where it's the opposite. In emotionally, what it means, I'm so disconnected, I don't even know that I'm disconnected.
So that, to admit that you were always wrong is the most difficult.
Of course.
So that's the bodyguard.
It's hard, of course.
So we're protecting the truth, which sometimes
We're protecting the truth, and we're protecting the deep truth, and sometimes the deeper the truth, the more intense the protection, and therefore the more intense the lies. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to see through that.
You don't need a lot of protection, but
Yeah. So now, exactly, 4 knocks, yeah, Alcatraz. So he says, I'm just bringing it out in people's lives, but the Nakuda here that he's saying is when the Medaber in Olam Hazeh chooses the opposite, you can't get there. He's not letting you. So the regular birur of tikkun coming to tell you and saying, come, Malkas Shva was so excited about Shloimeh. It was the gift of her life. But this person is like, no way, I'm not getting close to you. And really, they're hiding something very deep. Because the nitzutz of Toyu is still there. At the end of Eiv, chapter 40, at the end of the long debate between Eiv and his friend, which is basically a debate about good and evil, and why do bad things happen to good people, and why are good people suffering. And Eiv's friends are telling him it's your fault, God is always good and perfect, and it's your fault, and you're the problem, and Eiv is arguing, I'm a good person. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. And finally, at the end, I think it's Perek Lamed Zayin, chapter 3, Hashem reveals himself to Eiv. Like now the ultimate judge comes in. So now we're expecting to hear the answer why good people suffer. And all God does the next few chapters is he asks, like a good Jew, he asks like 100 questions. And the first question is, where were you when I created the world? Eifei hayisa b'yazdi aretz. That's the first question. And then he starts going through, were you there when the lightnings were created? And were you there when the first rain was formed? And were you there when a mountain goat has to give birth? Are you there when a mountain goat has to be birthed? Are you the one who opens the womb? But the bottom line is, how much of creation do you really understand? You don't understand how the sun works. You think you understand anything else in the world? And it goes chapter after chapter after chapter. So at the end of the whole Vikuach, the Rebbe says,
at least Yov knew that he shouldn't cover up like all his friends.
You're right. Hashem told Eiv that he's upset with his friends. They all need forgiveness, he said. Because they weren't authentic. The Ralbag writes, the Malbim says, that your friends are trying to flatter me. They think they're going to flatter me by saying that I am always right. They don't They think they're going to appease me by saying nice things about me. At least you're being honest. That's what he says over there. It's interesting. Why he was so upset at the friends. They weren't being truthful.
That's in the words of Yov. Because
Yeah,
he
yeah.
said, what? You think I'm intellectually less capable than you?
Yeah.
To give me all the mashalim and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
You're not authentic pretty much.
Yeah. So at the end it says there, Vayan Hashem es Eiv min Saira. Hashem responds to Eiv from a storm. Vayomer, he says to him, and the lashon over there is, so it's a beautiful, beautiful pasuk. And it's a tavest Eiv Baal Peh. Vayan Hashem es Eiv min Asad vayomer, and he says, I'm just going to quote, Ezer na kegever v'chalatzecha sha'olcha v'hoidieni. Gird yourself like a gever, like a man with your chalatzim, with your loins, like gird yourself. I want to ask you a big question. I want you to answer me. And he's answered, so he goes and he says, Vayit in Pasuk Tes, Perek Mem Pasuk, V'im zroya ka'el loch, u'v'koil kamoyu tarem, sarem, adei nogoin v'goiva v'hoid v'hodor tilbosh, Hofetz evroi sapechu re'echol geya v'ashpileyu re'echol geya hachniyeyu v'hadoich rishoyim tachtom tomneim be'ofer yachat pneim chavoish batomun v'gam ani oideko kisirshia l'cho yeminecho. You understand? You know Eiv's Hebrew, Lashon Kodesh. Yeah, I'm just giving an approximate translation. He said, I'm going to ask you a question. If you have the arm of God, meaning you have the power of Hashem, if you're a shtickle God, and you could thunder with your voice like Hashem, B'kol kamoyu sarem. So I'm going to ask you, put on the clothes of exaltedness, of goin, of stolz, v'goiva. Put on the garments of beauty and grace. And then when you see all the arrogance in the world, humble it. When you see somebody boasting, subdue them. V'hadoich rishayim tachtam. Take the rishayim, take the wickedness and crush them under themselves. Take them and crush them under themselves. Hide them in the ground, in the soil. Take their faces and put them in hiding. And then I will surrender to you. V'gam ani oideka. Then I'll be moided to you. What's Hashem telling Eov? It's interesting. This Maimon put him there, but zooms into this pasuk in Eov. What's Hashem telling Eov? What's the sign that you're God? That there's certain things you could confront, and if you're attacking me, you do it. Hadoich rishayim tachtem. So see what he says. V'zeu shamar v'yan Hashem esiv mitzad v'yayim goymer im zroya ke'eloch hadoich rishayim tachtem tomnim ba'ofra goymer v'gam ani yedeka hainu hasimin im yashliv koicha shel HaKadosh Baruch im zroya ke'eloch hu shvidas harishayim hadoich rishayim tachtem tomnim ba'ofra. Shemizamash mishvidas harishayim hu davar she'ef shelias rak adei HaKadosh Baruch Hu levadi v'lo yadei hatzadikim. The siman, the sign, if Eov has divine strength, if he's Hashem, im zroya ke'elach, is if you could crush the Rishayim. Hadoich Rishayim tachtem. Suddenly you see here that there's a level of breaking the Rishayim, that's something that even the tzaddik can do, only Hashem. V'hainu lefi sheshayrish hatzadikim hu me'olam hatikun. V'ilu harishayim hu sharshem me'olam hatoyu shelamayla metikun. Because there's something here, why can't the tzaddik break him? There's something here that has the power of Toyu, which is higher than Tikkun. So he says, if you're really God, Eov, you really think that you are on this highest level of the world, the creator of the world, then I will surrender to you when you can confront these things.
What's the whole killing movement? The Irish can.
Uh-huh.
It says that we can't einkehren mit dem in der Wischbad.
In the Chish geendigt. The tzaddikim come from Tikkun. These Rishayim come from Toyu, which is higher than Tikkun. They fell much lower. They're Rishayim, they're not tzaddikim. But there's an intensity here that it's very powerful. That's the idea that Esav is the firstborn, he's the oldest. It's not a mistake. Esav is the oldest means he comes before Yaakov. Huh? He's from Toyu. Toyu precedes Tikkun. It's not a question in time. He happened to be born first. But it means that in Esav there is something that is higher, that is taller, that is deeper than Yaakov.
So who's Yaakov to kill Yosef? He's come from Tikkun. What's his...
V'zeu gam mashatan Haman leMordechai. The Medrash says that Haman told Mordechai, Skeinecha hishtachav el iskeini. K'may shekasav b'Yaakov hishtachu artzad achiv. So why can't you bow down to me? Haman told Mordechai, when he saw that he's not bowing down, your Zayda, bow down to my Zayda. Haman came from Agag, came from Amalek. Amalek was a grandson. Amalek was a grandson of Esav. Eliphaz was Esav's son. Eliphaz was Amalek's father. Your grandfather, Mordechai, you're from Shevet Binyamin. Binyamin was a son of Yaakov. You come from Yaakov. Your grandfather bowed down to my grandfather. It says in Parshas Vayishlach, Vayishtachu, 7 times Yaakov bowed down to Esav. So why can you bow down to me? Not bad. Mordechai says, I'm not bowing down to you. Why not? Learn from Yezedi. Yezedi is going to find a Yid, an Ehrlich Yid. He even had smicha. He was in a good yeshiva. He did a good shidduch. He was a fine Yid. He's even called one of the Avos. And it's a book to Esav. So now you bow down to me. Let history repeat itself. Mordechai, no. What's pshat? Mevur b'Torah Oisad Alter Rebbe says in Torah Vayishlach Shezel Lefi Sheyakov Chashav She'esav Kvar Nizbara. At this point, after 20 years, Yaakov believed and felt that Toyu already was Nizbar. Esav was elevated back to his source, so he shtaka bowed down to him. Because mitzad the b'chin of Yaakov, Esav was already in a place of birur. And then indeed, it warrants that Yaakov should bow down to Esav, because there's something in Esav that is powerful and is higher than Yaakov. Toyu is higher than Tikkun.
Really? Why don't he hide Dina? If he's already elevated to Toyu, give him Dina. What's the problem?
No, Mitzad Yaakov was taka that way. And then when he met Esav, he realized, but in Esav's world, he wasn't yet Nizbarer. But in Yaakov's world, he was Nizbarer. This means, in a relationship with a person, you have to know if it's me or if it's you. It's a very big difference. And the two are very confusing.
We need clarity first.
You always need clarity first. Is it about me or is it about you?
So
This is my own work. Yaakov knew after 20 years, he was in a place where he's ready for Esav.
he was ready to actually take upon even Broch of Esav.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
So how
And that's why Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim Lefanov, the Alter Rebbe teaches Lefanov al Esav Achiv, to the Pnimius of Esav, to the Achiv, to the brother, to his brother, to Toyu, which is a partner with Tikkun, a Chaver, one with Tikkun. They sent back and they said, you're Taka Mevurer, but Esav is still not ready yet.
why he was hold that if he was already Mabur Esav?
He didn't withhold it,
So
but ultimately Esav has to be open to it.
well, he did withhold because he's telling him, you go to see I'll go. See
Because the bitter wasn't there yet. Mitzad Esav, the bitter wasn't there. You still have to work it through.
2,000 years ago.
Answers to your questions, das weiß ich nicht. Huh? So Mordechai lo yichra v'lo yishtachava, we'll soon see, because Haman was not the Toyu that was Nizbader. And Tikkun could only bow down to Toyu. Not a fault on Mordechai. No, fakert. Lo yichra v'lo yishtachava, because he understood, even though Yaakov bowed down to Esav, because Yaakov was trying to reveal the truth of Esav and bring it out and access that part of Esav. Haman was not in that position. And therefore for Mordechai to bow down to Haman would only give more strength to the evil of Haman. Yeah. And then there's lo yichra v'lo yishtachava. When you bow down to Toyu when it's not ready for the birur, Toyu doesn't know what it is. If Toyu doesn't know what it is, it takes your bowing down simply as you're giving it more power to do its craziness. It feeds off your weakness. When Tikkun bows down to the Toyu and its Shayrish, it's not weakness. When a Jew bows down to Hashem, Anachnu Kairim Mishnachavim, I don't bow down to anybody. I don't bow down to anybody. No. Kairim. 5 times. Go bow down. Fakert. Because lo yichav lo yishtachava, then when you're bowing down, you're bowing down. When you're surrendering to Ein Sof, that's the deepest strength in the world. It's like bittul. You're aligning yourself with infinity. Then you want to bow down. What do you want to hold on to? Your ego that doesn't exist. What are you going to hold on to? Your yeshus, your shtus, your arrogance, your insecurity. Was haltst du? What's this that you're holding on to? They don't want to bow down. Anachnu kaidim mishtachavim. Bittul b'mitzias. Better, more the better. Stay down. The Gemara says in Brachas, Hamelech kivin shekara shuven ezoykef. You know, a melech by Shemini Esther, when he goes Baruch Atah Hashem, Baruch Atah, he stays down the whole Shemini Esther. If you want to throw a sroigim on him, that's the time. When the king is davening Shemini Esther, he's a pure victim. Everybody's azay and the melech is down, a whole Shemini Esther. Everybody else is up. We bow down twice in the beginning, twice at the end. Hamelech kivin shekara shuven ezoykef. Dafka because he's a melech. Dafka because he's a melech. I lo yichav lo yishtachava to Haman, of course. Lo yichav lo yishtachava. Haman is just going to manipulate it. It's just weakness. When you're bowing down to God, to Hashem, to Ein Sof, it's the greatest power in the world. What are you holding? What are you holding on to? What? Tell me what you're holding on to. You're the Creator. What was haltst du? What do you not want to surrender? There's a big difference. When Haman goes back to his shayrish, when Toyu is Elikus in its shayrish, then Yaakov bows down. Yaakov experienced that energy. Mashenkin by Haman and Mordechai not. You understand the difference? It's a huge difference. Then they just feel, like you say, they just feed off your weakness. You're bowing down to me. It makes them bigger. When Toyu is in its shayrish, bowing down to Toyu is not making Toyu bigger because Toyu is bottled to Hashem. But the difference of bowing down to a paray, bowing down to, you have in the Navi, they bow down to Nevi'im and all that, Elio, Elisha, all that. Yeah. Today's Monday, huh?
I still don't understand why tikkun or no tikkun. This one has tikkun.
The energy of Esav there's a dual energy in Esav. There's the way Toyu is down here before the Birur, and there's the way Toyu is after the Birur. It's like a split personality.
So some part was
Because Yaakov wanted to bring out, hope to bring out the Birur of Esav, thinking after all these years he did the work and Esav did the work, so now Toyu could be Nizbarer. So the bowing down to Esav had in it a very lofty kavanah. Because if Esav Taka goes back to the source, then Yaakov could bow down to him. It's a beautiful thing. Because he's higher.
So why he's bound?
It's a bittul to Esav.
Is not mitaken. What's the
Because ultimately, that's what he's saying. You can't take away a person's choice. People have to be ready to be cracked open. I can try to crack you open. If a person is not ready to be cracked open, there's a certain blockage. The time didn't come. That's what he's going to say to Hemshech here. So even the tzaddik, at some point he tells Eov, if you're God, you break the Rasha. What does it mean you break? It's not like, oh, you do it. Like, let's see how strong you are. It's a nekudah here. He's going to explain it's a nekudah here, where the breaking of Toyu must come from Hashem himself, not even from the tzaddik.
he calls the Eov is a tzaddik, and obviously he cannot elevate the Torah, right? So why do you give him such a harsh punishment, where he is facing the cows, he's facing the Torah, the biggest Torah in his life, and knowing that he would not be able to mitaken it? What's the challenge for Eov? For Eov, as a tzaddik, does he deserve what he went through? He went through Holocaust, and then Hashem told him, "You're not a tzaddik to be able to actually face it or do the right thing."
No, this was a comfort for Eov. It's a comfort for Eov. You're taking responsibility for something that you can't take responsibility for.
Right.
It was a comfort for Eov.
Oh, so he was able to subdue his anger, per se.
Don't blame yourself. You're taking responsibility for something you can't take responsibility for. You have to know where your role stops, where your role begins and where your role stops. This was a comfort for him. Yeah.
Your was able to perceive it.
Of course, that's what he was telling him. He wasn't trying to mock him, oh, you're not God. Fakert. Mipsari echzelaka, yeah. That's what Eov said. Mipsari, from my flesh I will perceive God. It was a comforting idea for Eov. This is not something you can take on. When Toyu is in a place that's higher than Tikkun, and it's not ready to be opened, to be cracked open, it's higher, and you have to realize that there's an intensity and a ferociousness here that you need the Creator himself to tackle. And therefore don't guilt yourself and shame yourself for not cracking it open. You have to know your boundaries as well. There's a boundary between Creator and creation.
I would say that's why the whole up there and there, like, Kohen Mushtaq, then it's not correct. When it came from Yaakov.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Yaakov was on the same level. He's a tzaddik level.
Yeah.
Right? So he cannot possibly mitaken.
Right.
To the certain level he can do it.
Right. If Toyu is opened up, it's opened up. Like Malchus Shema comes to Shloima. But if Malchus Shema runs further away from Shloima, you have to know your limit. Because Toyu has such a power, you're standing in front of it and you're like, oh wow, this is beyond me. And this creates the humbleness of the tzaddik who says, this is not something I can take credit, this is not something I can blame myself for, but therefore it's also not something I can take credit for. All I can do is be a channel. And it's true also in healing. One of the worst things that happens is when people, there's a payoff. When you take credit for healing somebody, you also take the blame for not healing them. And it's going to be a steep price to pay. It's like, oh, look what I did to this person. I changed his life. And then tomorrow you're going to meet somebody and their life is going to become worse after meeting you. You're going to take the blame for that too. Until you realize this has nothing to do with me. At best, I can be a channel for God's healing. It's a big nisayon because success breeds a motivation to take credit. Gibakuk. And the person is writing, you tell you changed my life, you changed my life, you changed my life, you changed my wife, you changed my kids. You're mamish Mashiach. I don't need Mashiach, I have you. And you start believing it. You start believing it. And you have also good rayas. But then tomorrow you're going to meet somebody and it's going to be the opposite. And then it's your fault. If you're the one who's responsible for Gula, you're also responsible for the Churban.
Can't selectively own it.
Exactly.
So what do? You throw all the metals into the toilet.
You throw the metals into the Pacific Ocean. I mean, you can hang it on your office, I don't mind. But just realize it's hanging, together with Haman. Yasu Eitz Gavaya Chamisha Mam and put all the metals over there.
Naam van de Alter Rebbe, if you don't take credit on the mitzvahs, it's the biggest ticket on the Gama Bris.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
No mitzvahs is no.
Yeah.
It's,
It's not personal.
nothing.
It's a very deep space. So he was comforting Eov, like Eov was taking responsibility for the evil of the world, and from his own life, and he had the ability to in many ways because look at his life, like he knew what suffering is. Like he wasn't preaching, he was lecturing, and Hashem was telling him that there's things that are really, really beyond you. Toyu is higher than you. You're from Tikkun. Toyu is higher, and because Toyu is higher, and you're facing that level of darkness. For this, you need Hashem Himself, the author of the entire plot, the darkness and the light, to be able to deal with it. And if you're really experiencing yourself as God, then this is where it's going to come out. And this is where you need to surrender, that I cannot break this. I really can't. This is where I can only show up as a channel, literally as a channel. And therefore I won't take credit for this. I won't take blame for this. And it's not that I'm not responsible and I want to be lazy. On the contrary, this is what allows you to become a selfless conduit for the source. And then it's not you, it's the source. And when it's the source, then it's a completely different cheshbon.
In a way, Eov does exactly that. He becomes a pure channel for the truth to come out. Because if he would not take HaKadosh Baruch Hu into account, per se, right?
Yeah.
We would not know anything. We would
Yeah.
not know the preview of this knowledge.
Yeah.
The key being that you're not the source.
The key being that you're not the source. Don't try to replace source with you. Not because we want to keep people small. It's because we want to make people big. People think when you say this, it's we want to keep everybody small. And that's what often happens. That's where Amunah becomes so confusing for people. It's like, just keep everybody small. It's not you, nothing is you, nothing is you. Everything is Hashem, 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 Hashem. Who am I? A garnished. And if you think you're not a garnished, Mr. Emes a garnished. In Chassidus, it's the exact opposite. It's you want to actually make people big. But what does big mean? When you replace yourself with the source, you don't become big. You become the greatest prisoner of yourself. You take this fake ego, fake news, as our president likes to say. You turn it into real news, and it's very disappointing. And then it's torturous. But if you can get yourself out of the way, and you just source, the more you hollow out your ego and you make it empty, to the point that there's nothing left besides source, then paradoxically, you become the source. You're not separate. Yeah, you become an extension. You become part of the source. So this idea of not replacing source with you is so fundamental because it's not a recipe for smallness. It's a recipe for greatness, but it's a different type of greatness. It's not a greatness, I'm great, look how great I am, give me more attention, give me more validation. It's the true greatness where you channel ultimate greatness, and there's nothing greater than that. We always say the greatest burden is the burden, the need to have the ego exist. That's the greatest burden in the world. The greatest burden in the world is, build me up, please build me up. It makes me the most desperate, tortured soul. And it's like lethal because it's so deep, And it's understandable, we need it because that's the self that needs validation. To be able to liberate Eov from that space, don't blame yourself. This is a big, big thing. All you can show up is, ask myself what I can do. I'm an neshama of tikkun. So there's something very, very deep. There's a secret spark in Toyu that's beyond you. And only source can deal with it. Only source can confront it. And the same is true the Toyu inside of you, yeah. The Toyu inside of you, it's the same place. It's so powerful sometimes that I need to surrender to source. I don't have the Eitzah. It's mamish surrender. My brilliance, my creativity, my structure, my control, it's not going to do it. And that's what God tells you. You think you're God? Okay, deal with this. And in fact, I would say most people learn surrender from these words to Eov. We feel it in our life. Somebody once came to the Kotzker Rebbe and he said, I have a friend as a shoite and he's a gvir. Ich bin a chachem and I don't have bread on my table. It's not fair. That guy's an idiot and he's a millionaire. I'm a brilliant guy, I got nothing. So the Kotzker Rebbe said, was willst du von mir? It's a posuk. Shlomo Melech says, Loi lachachamim lechem. Smart people don't have bread. Loi lachachamim lechem. If you want bread, be dumb. So he tells the Kotzker Rebbe, Hagufa kasha, why not? So he says, Weil du bist a chachem, sagt der Eberste, bist a chachem? Geh gefind dein eigene Brot. God says, you're so brilliant, figure it out. Go find your bread. You're brilliant, yeah, go do it. Yeah. It's a very deep word. You understand? It's in everything like that. You're brilliant, right? So go do it. Embodied betochen, not intellectual. Embodied, nervous system betochen. Vani eftach bach. Vani eftach bach. It's not intellectual. David HaMelech knew how to be an intellectual, but the Rebbe Dayatz once said, he said, David HaMelech is given Agon Hadar. The Gemara says he was the head of the Sanhedrin. He was the head of the Sanhedrin. So he said that Nish Gemach. So what did he do with his time? That's what he said. That he could have written a sefer of Babakam, Babmetzia, Bababas, Patchen sich in Beichela, und sagen, ich bin Agon Hadar Sisu bnei Meyai Sisu. He could have better himself. Look what Agon Hadar. He said that he gemacht a tilimol of anvaramen an neshama. He wrote a tilim so that all souls are warmed up forever. Where does surrender happen in people? It happens at these moments. At these moments when you have to tell yourself, you're God, take this over. And it exists in many cases. You know, sometimes the ultimate surrender happens when people reach a breaking point where they feel like they're going to go into psychosis or they're going to go to death of ego. And it's at that moment where their deepest ego can't solve the problems of life. It just can't. That's really where surrender happens. Where does surrender really happen? I don't know if everybody will understand what I'm going to say now, but fine. We create a whole life around replacing the source. And our egos handle life pretty good, let's face it. Our nefesh habahamis are pretty brilliant. Some of us make money, some of us become celebrities, some of us at least become chashav yidin, feine yidin. We carve out a space for ourselves in the world. This way, that way, Torah, avodah, gemilas chsadim, Torah, gdula b'makam echad, whatever your ambitions are. This one becomes the best plumber in the industry, and this one becomes the greatest real estate broker in the city of Manhattan. This one becomes the greatest shark in New York City, and this guy becomes the tzaddik hadar of New York City. But everybody carves out a space where I am in control and my ego figures it out. Where's the healing of people? The healing of people is when Hashem tells this to Eov. You see this moment? Figure it out with your ego. Those of you who reach this moment, it's your greatest gift. It's the greatest gift when you say, wow, I'm not source and I need to surrender to source. That's your moment of redemption. What people think is their greatest curse is usually the greatest gift. It's that moment that forces you to say, I can't keep this together. I can't keep this together. So give it up. Don't keep it together. Who asked you to keep it together? I'm saying how this is reflected internally. Every nikud is reflected internally. So this is where Eov is like, Eov is carrying the pain of the world. I'm using Eov as a metaphor now. Eov has so much pain. What is that? It's like the Jew who carries the pain of the world. The tsaras. Eov is a leper. Eov is poor. Eov sees loss and grief. He carries the pain of the world like a good Jewish mother. Lost everything. When Eov krechtzes, it's a sigh. The Jew carrying the pain of the world. That's Eiv, right? He's carrying all the pain. I'm using this as a metaphor here. The Gemara has a shita that Eiv was a mashal. There's a shita in Baba Bas that Eiv is a metaphor. It's a machlokes if Eiv was real or Eiv is a metaphor. And I don't even think it's a machlokes. Eilev Eile Divrei Elokim Chayim, right? If Eiv is a metaphor, he's even more real. You understand? Because it's not just a story that happened. It's everybody's story in one way or another. So Eiv is that Jew, the Jew who carries the pain of the whole world. Krechtzit and krechtzit and krechtzit and krechtzit. For good reason. Huh? What? Job. Yeah, Eiv is in English they call him Job.
Not Steve Jobs. No, that's different.
Thinking about
Steve Jobs, you're mentioning Jobs. Steve Jobs replaced the pain of his life. He had a lot of pain. And he became, it's the greatest gift when your ego says, I can't handle this anymore. Our ego made it happen. It worked. It worked for a lot of years. It carves out its space. And then there's a breaking point. You go back to that space where the ego was formed the first time. Because it wanted to save you from brokenness. Because Toyu was broken. So the ego is a result of Toyu. If there was no Shviras HaKelim of Toyu, there would be no ego. The ego is turning brokenness into fake wholeness. Listen to this. This is Nekudas Achsidus. Ego is turning brokenness into fake wholeness. Attributing wholeness to something that's really broken. And there's a reason it does it. It wants you to be safe. It carves out a nice space for you. And anything that comes your way to break the ego, it knows how to neutralize. Either you become my enemy or you become my friend. Either I cultivate you and manipulate you, or I stay away from you. It's fine. The ego is brilliant. You're my friend, you're my enemy. You I like, you I don't like. Dir ha-bechunter and tash. You're stuck in my bosom and you stay away. You're anyway a shtickle apikaitis. And all judgment is the ego playing safe. It's dodging. Those arcade games where you're dodging the what is it called? Those arrows that come. What are those games? They're good games. Pac-Man, Donkey Kong. But there's one where the arrows are flying and you have to, Space shooter? Okay, it's been a couple of years. So, and today the kids are already into much more sophisticated games, right? Tanky.
It was the first game Atari came up with.
But it's exactly what it looks like, right? And the ego dodges, and everybody who comes into the room, okay, Mishaloni Litzadeni, my friend, you may. It's very subtle, but it's always there. Your wife comes home, you check out her face, Mishaloni, Nish Mishaloni. You run away to your bed. Maidiv, Megaitza Maidiv. Pavas Legate Mensa Maidiv. Shachris, you stayed at home. Mincha, you stayed at home. Was a Pusling Hashem by Maidiv? Yeah, like the joke, yeah. What's my point? The point is we figure out a way of doing it. Yeah. The greatest moment in life is when God tells Eiv, if you're really the source, deal with this one. And Eiv says, I can't. So he says, so stop blaming yourself and stop taking credit. Don't blame yourself for the brokenness of the Shviras HaKelim. And therefore don't take credit for what you created. Go back into the source and embrace. Surrender to source, and then you become source and you become a channel. But that means you also don't take credit for anything. That's the price you pay. The price you pay for Menuchas HaNefesh, of course. The need to take credit is only because detachment from source. It's a torturous need. It's coming from brokenness, and I'm trying to replace my brokenness with fake wholeness. And I do it well. I do it amazingly well. Until there comes a point in life where you can't. You hit a brick wall. Sometimes it's a moment that a person knows that they're going to go in, they feel like they're going into psychosis, or they feel like they're going to die. And what do you have left? Nothing. The only thing you have left is pure insanity or death. And that's when you go, okay, I'm done.
Checkmate.
I'm done, yeah. And it's not you surrender with consciousness and with brilliance and with avoida, like I'm surrendering. No. Yeah. The moment I'm surrendering, you're not surrendering. You're not surrendering anything. Sometimes we surrender as part of the ego. I have such a healthy ego, I even know how to surrender. I don't even need credit. I don't even need anybody to notice me. You know that. I don't need anybody to notice me. And that's when I'm busy. I'm busy being Atznei Aleches in Hashem Alekecha. Until.
I need to make sure that no one notices me, so no one notices me.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody once said the best feeling in the world is to do something anonymously and then somebody finds out. This one guy finds out and it goes on all the WhatsApps. He catches you in the corner. You were saying Tehillim at B'chiyas.
You make a mistake, a bunch of mistakes. You don't, like financially, that's something real. You don't blame yourself for that?
It helps.
It's helped to blame yourself? No, that's
So you know the answer.
It doesn't apply to them. This applies only with the other that has the bechira.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in every person we have that. Yeah, we all have that. And you can't delegitimize yourself because the Nefesh HaBahamis, that's how it lives. That's how it rolls. That's how it rolls. It must have the validation, or whatever its form of ego is. This one it's validation, and this one it's anxiety, and this one is victimhood. Whatever it is, every one. This one is anger, and this one is holier than thou, and this one is judgmentalism, and this one is addiction. Whatever it is, every person, you carve out your space of survival, and anyone who resists it, you eliminate them, or you neutralize them, or you subdue them, or you somehow bring them into your team. Now imagine in marriages how torturous this is. Either the husband is manipulating the wife is manipulating the husband. And the bottom line is there's no vulnerability. And these are very, very frequent things. This is living in a place of survival, which is always a place of tayu, always. Survival is tayu because it's chaos, there's chaos. I was once in a car with a driver, a taxi driver. We were going somewhere, I don't remember where, probably some event. And I was saying Tehillim. And I got involved in the Tehillim. I was emotional, I was saying Tehillim. And I was trying to tune into the words of David HaMelech, Always tell you that Tehillim is the most vulnerable book you'll ever find. Here's the most powerful man, but never goes into a place of ego, ever. And he could have. He was a king, and he was a powerful king, he was a warrior, and he was talented, and he was brilliant, and he was pretty fearless. David HaMelech was quite a man, to put it mildly. And when you read the Tanakh, it looks like the most powerful person in the world. Don't mess. He takes on Goliath, and he takes on everybody, and he's fearless. And that's David. When you go to David in Tehillim, you see it's a whole different person. Anoichi Seilas, I'm a worm, I'm not a person. Bzuyam. Muzra Yisi Le'echoi, Nochi Lebneimoi, Nafshi, I'm like a little child. Everything he's turning to Hashem. And you say, where are these? How do these two people work together? Then you understand why it says in Zoya that David is the fourth leg of the Merkava. David's entire power was complete the Merkava. It was a complete channel. You see this in David HaMelech. It's so powerful. So anyways, I'm saying this Tehillim, and I think I'm emotionally involved. And I'm getting emotional actually. I don't remember if I was crying or not, but I was saying Tehillim. And then a thought pops into me. And I'm saying this too because I want you to understand how the Nefesh HaBahamis works. And what do you think the thought said? Meila. That the thought always says. Das ist schon a schwache Nefesh HaBahamis. Worse.
The driver's part is also experiencing it.
I started to think about what my driver is thinking.
I want to know why you were saying Tillim in the taxi. He must have been a good driver.
It was probably the Yom Tillim. I don't remember why I was saying. It was probably the Yom, the sheer Tillim of the day.
He wanted to close the eyes.
The driver should ask you for $1.
And then I started to imagine what he's experiencing. And then there's even a thought, he should take a video now. And then it can even go viral. And it can inspire people. And it's all about, and then I'm like, OMG, wow. So right now, I could go into shame and guilt and what the animal soul does. But the truth is, this is exactly animal soul consciousness. I could also delegitimize the whole Tillim and say it was all a joke. It's not sincere. But that's also from the animal soul. The animal consciousness wants to keep you in a place of guilt and shame. Always. It'll do it through Kedusha, it'll do it through Klippa. First it'll say, let me get a video of you, and it'll become a tremendous success, so that your ego gets built up, your fake ego gets built up. And then it says, look what an embarrassment, fake, delegitimized, and it's all the same thing. Always. What's Vayivez? Vayivez haberurim is, hello animal. Hello, what else do you need? You're desperate for validation. Okay, let me give you a hug. Here, come. Here's a little hug. And if you listen, the animal soul will actually start crying. It'll actually start crying. If you're open, it'll start crying. It's not looking for real validation. It's looking for existence. This is how it came to know it exists. Every animal soul figures out what's existence. This animal soul, validation. He's going to admit. If you do it with kindness and empathy, he'll admit. He'll surrender. He's not even interested in it. It's hard work because he'll tell you he's interested in it, but he's not. It's a nitzutz of tayu. And there's also a deep, deep spark there. There's a deep, deep inyan over there in Kedusha. But it fell down in all of these camouflaged stuff of Klippa. So you see there's two extremes. One extreme is you just go into that space and it's all Nefesh HaBahamis. Or you get guilty about it and it's also all Nefesh HaBahamis. Or you say no. It's trying to block your experience. Hold it with empathy and kindness and then go back to say Tillim and it's fine. Your godly soul is fine. Yeah.
Have a gratitude to our Nefesh HaBahamis that it kept us
You should have gratitude to your Nefesh HaBahamis, but gratitude, as long as you're shekayach, here's your tip, Zeigezint.
not saying I thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, but we don't need any more of these survival skills.
Why not?
Because sometimes you have to leave Mitzrayim.
When everybody else goes.
Don't wait for everybody else. If you leave, they'll all follow you. Don't wait for other people. Now the animal, the Breit is Amos, yeah. So in our own life, this is a point, you reach sometimes a moment in life, there's literally a breaking point, where the ego was formed by the breaking point, because that's what Shriras HaKelim means. Shriras HaKelim means it was a breaking point. The ego stepped in and said, I'll take over. I'll turn your brokenness into fake wholeness through ego. I'll build it up. And we're going to keep you safe. Life pushes you back to the breaking point, and it's all with one tachlis, to be able to surrender to the real source and get your real wholeness. But the Tayu won't want that, because the Tayu turned the Shvira into a philosophy, into a God. So Hashem tells Eov, your God, take care of this one. Take care of this psychosis. Take care of this death. Take care of this. And the ego says, I'm done. You're done? Okay, come back home. Welcome home. Machaya. You surrender it all. The ego is happier, Toyu is happier, the Shabbamis is happier, Esav is, everybody's happier. Oh, I don't have to fight. Well, I was fighting a whole life. Wow, Machaya. You don't have to. Give it up. You know what peace there is in that? I hope everybody's taking this personal, because if you could do this in your life, this is the only vista, the only path to menuchas hanefesh. There's no other path to anxiety. Everything else, like it says in Tanya, there's no middle path. We love thinking there's a middle. There's no such a thing as a middle path. Either you surrender to the source, or you are a shtickle avodah zarah. If you're a shtickle avodah zarah, it's going to be torturous, because you're giving credit and existence to something that never existed. If you surrender to the source, you're a channel for life. There's nothing in the middle, literally, nothing in the middle.
All in or all out?
All in or all out, yeah. Now, people learn Tanya, they think it's so harsh. It's so harsh. You're such an extremist. Alter Rebbe is an extremist in Tanya. Everywhere he's an extremist. Like, leave me alone. Why can't I just sit on my couch and eat a shish kebab or drink a nice coffee and read a magazine or watch a nice clip or a nice this and chill out? I'm not fighting God. I'm not serving God. I'm just being a normal guy who wants to chill. In America, there's something called chill. Chill, buddy. Chill, relax. And fakert, we see people who take the religion seriously and they get us nervous. You know, frumkeit, they're like, somebody said frum is Rosh Hashanah, fil rishes venik mitzvahs. More verfrumt and verquetscht, and you're angry and you're miserable and everybody else is miserable. And leave me alone, I want to chill. There's a whole culture today in the frum world, let's chill. You know, you do plag minchas, so you get rid of mincha and ma'ariv by 4:20, you're done with God, and you have tilva sikken, so you have, you can have 15 hours without God, I'm a chaya. And you daven with a minyan also, and you finish daf yomi too. 4:20, you're done with ma'ariv, I'm a chaya. And if you daven a little later tomorrow, so from 4:20 p.m. until the next day, you come here at 10 o'clock for shachas, 9 for shachas, and you're done, you're no religion. 14 hours of a break, not bad for an Orthodox Jew. Not bad for a Haredi Jew to have 14 hours without God. Sometimes you see the simcha when people finish plag. Mincha, ma'ariv, boom, done, we're finished. You know what I'm talking about? A guy was once telling me how he loves plag. I said, why? He says, just get it out of the way. Just leave me alone. At least he was maida. I'm not saying chas for somebody who davens plag does it. I'm just saying you have this nekuda.
Some people are born gedaven, and
they don't have the guilt. But the truth is that the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, it's the truth that you'll never go away from. The deeper you'll always go back to the same. We could run from today till tomorrow. What he's saying is there's one truth about life. Either you're getting closer to that truth every moment, or you're distracting yourself from that truth. It's the kindest thing you could have said. People think that Tanya is harsh. I tell them it's the deepest book of love you will ever encounter in history. It's telling you the raw truth. Every moment and every experience, you're either getting closer to truth or you're distracting yourself from truth. Huh? Pusach Reb Shimon. And if you're getting closer to truth, you're getting closer to bliss. You're getting closer to oneness. You're getting closer to love. And if you're distracting yourself from truth, you're going more into a torturous place where you need more distractions to distract you and numb you from the fact that you're distancing yourself from truth. And you could do it. You could do it for years. And the sensitive ones among us know how torturous it is. And there's only one eitzah. It's called surrender. In Chassidus, it's called bittul. And you say, bittul is ashir. I did bittul yesterday. Bittul is breathing. I also breathed yesterday, and I'm still breathing now, Baruch Hashem. And I hope to be breathing tomorrow at the same time. I'm not going to say, I breathed yesterday. Bittul is oxygen. It's not luxury. It's not eating steak. Steak you don't have to eat. Of course, it's oxygen. It's moisav and it's moisav oilach, because once you surrender one level, you surrender deeper, 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 deeper. Remember, it's like the onions of a layer. You go deeper, deeper, deeper. Huh? Of course. You say, but it's hard work. It is hard work, but it's much, much better work than the work of running away from bittul. Because when you're going to bittul, you're going to truth. You're opening up more. You're authentic. When you're going away from it, it's less authentic, less authentic, less authentic. The energy you have to put in creating a fake life is endlessly more torturous than the energy you put in to become true. Here you're like investing money in a real thing. You're growing capacity to hold truth. And here you're investing in a scheme, in a fake thing. And every year you're just going to see how more fake it is until it just plotzes and explodes in your face. And you're like, blah. A Ponzi scheme is the right word for it, yeah. Mamash a Ponzi scheme. Huh? It could. So you say frumkeit. It's not frumkeit. It's bittul. It's a very big difference. Frumkeit is another coping mechanism. This guy is plag. and he gets rid of God that way, and this guy is busy with his misery, and that's how he copes. And the more frum and judgmental he is, and egotistical he is, and the whole world is evil, and he's the only frum guy, and he's going straight to Olam Haba, it's his coping mechanism. Real Yiras Shamayim, it's not a coping mechanism. You're not trying to cope. And you're not miserable. Fakert, you're besimcha. You're a channel, it's a schus. That's what Yiras Shamayim is. It's bittul. So this nekuda that he's telling Eov is a very, very personal experience. Because it's that space where don't blame yourself and don't take credit. You're healing somebody. Don't take credit. When it's not working, you don't have to blame.
Well, that's what Eov asked from Hashem before he starts dialogue. He says, don't slap me and don't...
You're right.
on me.
You're right. Now, daimim tzemei. Here it's about me. I can't say I don't blame myself, I don't take credit. No, ask yourself, what are you showing up as? Because daimim tzemei is waiting for your redemption. If I'm eating a piece of food and I say it's not ready, no, you're not ready. You're not ready. But when you're dealing with a person, that's what he says, a medaber, you have to understand. Sometimes Malkus Shva is open, and sometimes the Toyu is very, very intense and it's not ready yet. And you have to say healing is going to come in God's time. It's going to come in God's time when God is ready. Yitzias Mitzrayim is lo yikvan afilu kerafai, and it says when the Ketz came, they went out in a second. Huh? Yeah. And you have to be able to know there's tremendous resistance here. I could show up, Eov says I could show up as a tzaddik, but remember you're from Olam HaTikkun. And Olam HaToyu has a power that Tikkun doesn't have, and here you have to surrender to God. And in everybody's life there's those things. Don't take control. Don't get in the way. Whenever you're dealing with Toyu, don't be in control. You're dealing with Toyu. If Toyu is opened, Toyu opened up. It's also not your credit. That's the Chiddush. Shlomo didn't take credit for Malkus Shva. If Shlomo would have taken credit for Malkus Shva, he would have blamed himself for the Toyu that he can't touch. Don't take your credit. She came because she was ready. And when Toyu is not ready, your control is not going to make it ready, and your blame won't make it ready. It's in God's time. But you stay present. You understand how powerful this is? You see why what's so healing? People blame themselves. Don't take credit and don't blame yourself. Don't take credit for Malkus Shva. You weren't the healer. You were Zoichet to be a torch, and she felt it. She was open, gewaldig. Sometimes Toyu, it's not open. It's in God's time. But Toyu is higher than Tikkun, so you have to have that humility. Don't become codependent. Don't become a control freak. Don't also become demoralized. When you take control, you also become demoralized. It's not working. My life is in shambles. It's not working. It's Toyu. And in God's time, He knows when the Toyu is going to be in His body. So that's what He's telling Eov, something very, very deep. This is the point where you can't mistake yourself for God. You're dealing with such a reality that the only one who can tackle this level of reality is Hashem. With your ego, you're not going to make sense. That's why people sometimes go on very, very deep journeys. And they touch a place of psychosis where they realize that with their brains, they're going to literally go crazy. And if they continue that way, insanity will set in Chalila v'chas. And that's the moment they surrender. And they're liberated. It's called ego death. Ego death is when you begin to live. As long as your ego is alive, you're dead. The moment your ego dies, you could come to life.
It's an absolute thing. It's not abyssal.
Yeah. That's the depth of Kaddish. We all know this. When my ego is alive, I'm dead. My soul is dead. Because it's fake news. I don't know, but it's good. Can the chnutzen an expression to explain something? It's a good expression, right? The ego is fake news. It's real news. It's like the New York Times. Every headline is a sheker. It's the most respected newspaper in the world. But every headline, there was a Yid came into the Alter Rebbe once on Yechidus, and he said something to the Alter Rebbe. You know what the Alter Rebbe said? He said, "Das is a sheker. That's a lie. What you just said." So he said, the Rebbe is choshed mir, and azak groise sheker, it's such a big lie. So outside there was a church, it's in Liajna, so there was a Greek Orthodox, whatever the churches that they had there. It was a tall building, they used to make. So the Rebbe said, Giba Kok, das ist noch größer wie dir, und sag größer sheker. This is bigger than you, and it's a bigger lie. Like what? Well, because it's big, it's not a lie. What? If it's a lie, it's a lie. Don't tell me it's big, it's famous. I don't care if it's big. So it's a big lie. It's a big lie. What's the größte Sach? So it's not a small lie, it's a big lie. You think because you're making it big, it's not going to be a lie? Stalin once said, Yamach Shemai, one death is a tragedy. 1 million deaths is a statistic. You understand? It's a statistic, so it's not it's a bigger issue. Call it whatever you want. Call it a statistic. The Rebbe once said it over at a Fabrengen, and he said, "Ich will nicht überchazen," and who said it? I don't want to say who said it. He didn't even want to say who said it. It's a statistic. He also said, and I think this is from Hitler, he said, a small lie people don't believe. A big lie everybody will believe. It can be. A small lie, yeah, gobbles. The Rebbe said it over, he says, I don't want to say who said it. He didn't want to say his name. It could be wasn't even in Germany when he said it. But the bottom line is, why? A big lie. A small lie, you won't believe me. Yeah, a big lie, how could it be? But just the big lie doesn't make it not a lie. It's a big lie. So he's saying the guy has such chutzpah, he could say a big lie, and that he knows that people believe it. The ego does exactly the same thing. So there comes a point where so take this on. And when the ego says I can't, and it's so painful, and it realizes it can't, so suddenly it just lets go. And it really experiences an ego death. And when there's an ego death, you could start living. You start living. Who's you? The chelik elokam imal starts living. And then you're alive, you're really alive, and that life is eternal. The same is true also with physical death. Just like everybody understands that when the ego dies, you're not dead, you're alive. The ego died. So the same is true when a person, Chalila, passes away. We say Chalila because life on this world is priceless and precious. But when the time of a person comes, they pass away. Yeah. So this doesn't call it death. Hilula. Histalkos. What's pshat? Just like when the ego dies, you don't die, you live. The ego dies. When the guf gets interrupted from the neshama doesn't die. Fakir, the neshama goes back. It's called chaye hachayim. Starts to live without any containers. For us, it's painful because we like the guf. We want to hold on to something. But chalila, to think for a moment the person dies. The guf is interrupted from the neshama, and that's tragic. It's painful. That's why there's avelas, there's grief. But the emes is to understand the nitzchiyus hanefesh. This is a big nechama for Jews throughout history. So many, especially what happened this week and everything. It doesn't take away the pain of the world, but it's a very, very profound thought when you know the 6 million Jews, all the gedoshim of Simchas Torah, etc., the hostages that were killed. The pain is horrific, and the Rishayim have to be destroyed, like Haman Rasha. But it's still a very powerful experience when you understand that nobody should think for a moment that the Bibas children, Hamas could really control their fate. They controlled their fate and did what they did, Yemach Shemam v'zichram, like Haman and Hitler and Pare and all these Rishayim and Stalin. And each of them, will get their due. And nothing comforts us from that world, but it's also important to understand. And it's a very, very deep place, this. To understand what a neshama is, to really understand what a neshama is. And it's not something we can comprehend, and it's not something that assuages us and calms us down. Oh, everything is good. We're not, living in a la-la land where, okay, the neshama. But it's such a powerful, powerful truth to understand that as we surrender everything, including our understanding. To understand there's no such a thing that a neshama could be controlled by wickedness. There's no such a thing. What we see, what we experience is the horrible tragedy of the period haneshama from the guf. But to know the bliss of their souls and the depth of their souls. And I know it's not so many words here to say, but you understand my point. That's why when somebody passes away, we say Kaddish. Yizgadol v'yiskadosh Shmei Rabba. What's the connection? Let his name be exalted. Who's talking about his name? But the truth is that's the depth of what's happening. When there's a death of ego, the person begins to live. The ego dies, the person begins to live. When there's a death of the guf, the person becomes Shmei Rabba. Yizgadol v'yiskadosh Shmei Rabba. It's actually describing the person. The person is now Shmei Rabba. There's no separation anymore. There's nothing hiding the connection. Again, we cherish life. But that's the emes. The emes is it's Yizgadol v'yiskadosh Shmei Rabba. That's the person. The person is a part of Shmei Rabba. This is a Purim Dekamayimer, yeah? This is a Purim Dekamayimer, Purim Tavshin Chavav.
So who is alive today?
Who was alive?
Can we point out who's alive? I can point out Chas v'Shalom and other.
Listen, like we spoke Shabbos, surrender is not a space you're in or out, it's a spectrum. Right? We go in, we go out, we go in, we go out. We vacillate. There's Toyu, there's Tikkun, there's Nefesh Elokiz, and Nefesh Bahamas. But the more you train yourself in this avodah, you build capacity and you build muscle. You know, bittul is a muscle. It's really a muscle. What do they say about muscles? Use it or lose it. You don't use a muscle. Chas v'shalom, you lose it. It becomes stuck. It becomes frozen. And then you have to stretch it and open it up. To say, huh? Yeah. Atrophy, yeah. But sometimes it doesn't die out, it just gets congealed, gets tight. It has spasms. Bittul is a muscle. The more we practice it, the more we use it, the more it expands, the more it builds capacity. The next time it becomes easier and easier. It becomes higher, but it becomes easier. So we go in and out, in and out, in and out, and we forget ourselves, I'm saying Tehillim, and suddenly I'm thinking about what the driver is thinking. And how good it would be if it would become, like I said, you do it anonymous and everybody knows about it. And wow, my poor animal soul, okay, you just came to life. Oh, Bruchim Abayim, here, let me give you a hug. Let's go back to Tillim. But without anger. Because if you're getting angry, it's part of the Nefesh HaBahamis putting you into a new trap. Now you get anger and ashamed. Look what a lowlife I am. Look what an arrogant piece of spaghetti I am. Look what an idiot. Look what a hypocrite. Oh, I'm saying Tillim. Really? You're not saying Tillim, you're looking for attention. So right away you delegitimize everything. So now what happens? The Nefesh HaBahamis won. Baruch Hashem, chaos. You understand the trap? That's the trap of guilt and shame and more shame and more shame. How can I be like this? Oh, so that means I wasn't really saying, so that means it wasn't true, it wasn't authentic. And now you destroy yourself. Instead of looking at it and saying the baby is throwing a tantrum, the animal soul is throwing a tantrum. Okay, so give him a hug and say, yeah, I'm here, I get it. You really need validation. I'm so sorry. Here, come here, give me a hug. Your Shviras HaKelim was pretty bad. I get it. And you think if somebody sees a clip of you saying Tehillim or you doing this, you'll become a chashuva person. Fine, Baruch Hashem. Okay, come, let me make a clip of you. Come, let's make a video of you saying Tehillim. And you know what happens? Nefesh HaBahamis will start laughing, start smiling, then start crying, and then give you back a hug, and then say, okay, let's go say Tillim together. Iskafi and then Ishapcha. That's all it needed. It needed a little attention. You get shameful and guilt. Me, I'm not, no, I don't need covered. Of course you need covered. Who doesn't need? Of course you need. You want attention, you want validation. Yeah, everybody, people want it. So people want other things. This guy wants this guy wants that. Don't say you don't. Ain't a patrupus la'arayis. It's like when men say, I don't have issues with women. Really? That itself is an issue. Yeah. Ain't a patrupus la'arayis. What does ain't a patrupus la'arayis? It's not below you, right? It's talking with Shlomo HaMelech. That's the story with Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech said, I'll have a lot of wives and it won't affect me. It says, Lo yar b'lo noshim. Shlomo HaMelech says, not me. And that was Shlomo HaMelech's downfall. Shlomo HaMelech, you see who Shlomo HaMelech was. Shlomo HaMelech was no... Shlomo HaMelech was not a katlakanya. You're talking about Shlomo HaMelech was literally the zenith of Knesset Yisrael. Kai Mesida Bashlemusa. From the shleimus that Shlomo HaMelech brought into the world, kevayachal, in a very, very subtle way, he lost bittul. That's the hemshech here. It's very interesting. The difference of Shlomo and Eov. Shlomo represented the success of Klal Yisrael in its highest spiritual form. And what happened? He said, I could play around with the Torah. I can have women. I can have extra women. You understand? He became a shtickle god. Kevayachal. I'm saying it in a very sensitive way. Shlomo was a big tzaddik. Shlomo was a big tzaddik. I don't know why they don't sing it on Shlomo. Noach was a tzaddik. Shlomo was also a tzaddik. Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash. You're talking about Shlomo Melech it's a big haflah, Shlomo Melech. So but in that nekuda, his shleimus, no word shleimus, his shleimus, kevayachal became very subtly, became a little trap. To the point that he could say, I don't need this mitzvah, I'm beyond it. Yeah. And then Eov is the opposite, right? Eov is burdened and struggling and full of pain and anguish and suffering. And Hashem says, and now you could see that you're not Hashem. So you don't have to take the blame and don't take the credit, and this is beyond you. It's really, really beyond you. And it's that point of surrender that becomes a source of bliss. And what happens to Eov afterwards? Right afterwards, it says his life turns around and he gets more success and more kids and more wealth than before. Psychologically, if it's a mashal, what it means, the moment of surrender, when you give it all up, now you get everything back. Yeah, now you get everything back. It's because everything was perfect. You just had to surrender. Okay. I don't want to speak until the room is completely empty, so I'll stop before it gets empty.
We live in the world of Mashiach. So here, if you don't take credit for what you did and put it now a resume and put it in a big pedestal, nobody's going to take a shmata to work. So we live in the world of Mashiach.
First of all, I want to protest. Yeah. In these Dalet Amas, we don't live in Olam HaSheker. This is Olam HaEmes here.
No, I'm talking about
just for the record.
I'm talking about the Olam HaSheker.
So bring this there.
So how?
Everybody's looking for this. What do you think? They're looking for something else.
So if I don't...
Nobody's looking for anything else. That's the whole nikud of the Tanya. You can't be looking for anything else because there's nothing else to look for. Either I'm distracting myself from truth or I'm looking for truth. There's nothing in the middle. I once heard from the Rabbi a beautiful word. Huh?
The whole system of resumes in America. I mean, by the way, it's only in America. In Russia doesn't have such thing.
Because in Russia, everybody is an engineer. You don't need a resume. Everybody has a PhD in engineering. So you don't need a resume. In America, there are a bunch of batlonim.
No, in Russia, you have a paper, which every paper says, and that paper, you put every job that you ever had. So when you go somewhere else, you don't need to say that I was the greatest engineer at Microsoft. They know exactly what you are because it says in the paper. So
I don't think.
fake everything.
Yeah, I don't think it's a stira.
Here, if you don't say that you were...
I don't think working with the system is a contradiction. It's called Dina de Malchus Dina, Ein Samchen ala Nes. It's working with the structures that God created to reveal the truth. The teva is a keli for l'mayla min teva. It's not a doesn't have to do with dissonance, but it's without anxiety. It's without anxiety. It's without selling my soul. It's without thinking that other people are going to have control over me. It's done with peace of mind. It's done with confidence, with regulation. It's different.
And you don't say sheker. You actually admit
You never say sheker. No, the sheker doesn't.
It would be equivalent to what they call in IFS compassion to the protectors.
Compassion for the protectors in IFS is really understanding that they're holding something and they've been doing their job very diligently. But don't take them at face value.
Same thing here. This is the mechanism for the Nefesh Bahamis to survive.
Yeah. It's understanding that this is how it works, and it could be done in a very noble way. On the contrary, you elevate that world. Instead of fighting it, you elevate it, but without selling yourself to it. Agerus Tzeit Yisrael, Agerus the Mishpacha, zum Zun, zum Eden. Wat haben wir nach Nachas? Agerus zu der Belimelech, zu der Tzvi. Hatzloch Rabbi, everybody.